That's a religious holy text. What are you talking about? Equivalent to the Bible.
I mean, there was a New York. There was in Egypt. Both confirmed.
All right. You're a stage moderator on this one now.
Cool. Hatros has his hand up.
Just a second. I'm going to start the show. Give me a moment.
All right, you guys are all good now?
Yeah, I just need a moment. I don't know why it's not starting.
Cool. Well, I'm busy. You guys have a good one. Keep doing what you do.
Thank you, Taco. Send love.
Oh, it did start. There's just a delay. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Theist Helpline. Your friendly hosts, friendly and helpful hosts of the Theist Helpline are, in alphabetical order, Amy Newman, who's known for her trademark slogan, Sending Love, is a professional comedian and skeptic who hosts debates, interviews, and conversations on her YouTube channel. She also creates educational and other important content. IX is a Tom and Boxes subscriber and former atheist community of Discord admin who enjoys long walks through evolutionary, biology-inspired computer science, archaeological, academic, biblical criticism, and so on. Jack Burton, it's all in the reflexes, is a self-described, middle-aged, college-educated nobody who drives the Pork Chop Express in his spare time. He's a deist and is mostly non-committal to philosophical stances. Jefferson Spatchcock is an atheist inquisitor and intellectual who has particular expertise in thoroughly analyzing and reviewing debates, often from the comfort of his genuine lazy boy chair. J.L. Warren is an atheist activist, educator, and entertainer. He runs the Bridge the Divide YouTube channel, where he addresses irrational beliefs, the irrational behaviors that often follow, the societal divides they create, and how those divides can be bridged with education, rationality, and reason. J-Mike is one of the co-hosts of the Talk Heathen show. Mubarak Abu Sharifa is an ex-Muslim who grew up in Saudi Arabia with knowledge of Islam and world history. He's also a co-host on Peter de Tucker's YouTube show. Peter de Tucker is an atheist epistemologist from the Netherlands, inspired by Arne Ra, Seth Andrews, Anthony Magnabosco, and others. He started a YouTube channel that mainly focuses on religion, but he also hosts shows on other topics, including interviews with other content creators and atheists he meets through social media. I'm Randolph Richardson. I'm an atheist activist from British Columbia, Canada. I advocate for the equality and normalization of people who don't believe in deities, which entails advocating for fair justice, freedom, and critical thinking. I'm also the founding president of the Canadian Atheists, a national organization that promotes atheism and agnosticism as culturally common aspects of Canadian society. Taco is the visionary organizer of the Theist Helpline. He is a #1 Discord debater who has never lost a Discord debate in his life. T-Jump, Tom Jump, is the founder of an atheist church called the Church of the Best Possible World, which is based on his model of objective morality. It has the goal of doing what Abrahamic churches should be doing, but are not, helping people by providing affordable housing. All the links, including to T-Jump's atheist church, Church of the Best Possible World, is available on the Theist Helpline website. If you go to www.theisthelpline.com and then click on the About Us section, and you'll see information about each of us there. A special thank you goes to our sponsors. There is the Politics Discord at www.politics.gg. www.discord.gg/politics, and also Canadian Atheists at www.canadianatheists.ca. You can also find these in the sponsors section under the Theist Helpline. Also, if you are a theist in need of help that we don't unfortunately get time to get to you on this show, you can also find resources under the resources section of the theisthelpline.com website. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. Welcome IX and Amy and T-Jump. How are all of you doing?
Doing pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Potato.
Doing great.
Well, you can probably hear my voice. I'm just getting over not doing too well. I was just on a cruise last week with my wife, and we took an excursion out to Seattle, and I think that's where I got it. And so I was sick only on the last day of the cruise, fortunately, but last day and a half. But it's fortunately, the good news for me is that it's not COVID-19.
Woohoo! Get any sicker, and you will have a nasal. You'll sound like me.
Hey, you're such a good sport about all this stuff, Amy.
Send in love.
How's your channel doing, Amy? I know you've been busy running streams quite consistently, and your audience is growing, right?
Yes, sir. It's been pretty fun. We did a Tower of Babel the last episode because that story is just so silly. You know, the fact that God kind of has small d energy and it's like, hey, you can't build a tower to heaven, and just knocks it over. And then all of the languages get confused. It makes so much sense. Too much sense. It has to be true.
I really like that your audience has a really healthy mixture of theists and atheists, and a lot of different topics get discussed in there. I think, T-Jump, you probably have a similar experience with your audience demographics too, don't you?
What was the question?
I was commenting on Amy has a really healthy mixture of theists and atheists in her YouTube audience, and I'm wondering if you probably have a similar kind of mixture, don't you?
I used to, back when I was doing like consistently new debates with professors and stuff, but I haven't had any time to set up new conversations. So I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's mostly atheists now.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, well, I hope you get more of those interviews because those are interesting. I really enjoyed those.
By the way, Amy, when you guys were talking about Babel, did you get into any of the archaeology that people like Nephilim Free like to claim is like the evidence of the actual Tower of Babel story? That people really believe in it, take it literally?
It was more someone, the opposition viewpoint was just giving their commentary on why they're, by his word, were reprobates. But I don't think he actually gave much of a defense of, it was just assuming it was.
I see.
Oh, there's a Christian in my
But that's
chat.
fascinating.
There's a Christian. He says, Jesus Christ is God, believe in him. So I'm guessing he's a Christian viewer.
Maybe he can come onto Discord and talk to us. But yeah, that counts. Yeah, so I was just watching a really great video on like Jericho, the oldest settlement in the world, or the oldest city in the world, goes through the history of Jericho, but it also goes through all the other archaeological contemporaries that are as or close to as old as Jericho. And one of the ones I had not heard about is called Tel Caramel. Sounds like it sounds like a Starbucks drink, right? I'd like the Tel Caramel. No, it's the Venti Caramel. Whatever, right? Anyway, it's a place in northern Syria that goes back to 10,900, and between then and 8,850, and there were 5 towers built in a series, like round stone towers. As far as I know, it's the oldest set of towers, which is pretty interesting.
That
So
is pretty cool.
way older even than the ones that Christians thought were Babel. There were already 5 towers, let alone 1.
I thought the Twin Towers
Yeah,
were the
we'll
oldest.
take
ones.
that, Christians.
Okay, so we have a guest. Thank you for joining us. One true holy apostolic
I just see a picture of a beaver.
Catholic Church. Apostle Catholic Church. Am I saying your name wrong?
I just see a picture of a beaver on where his name is supposed to be.
Yeah, it's one long line of all lowercase text, so I did my best to read it. We can't hear you. If you need to unmute your microphone at the physical level, maybe that's what is the hardware level. Maybe you need to do that.
Yeah, the spiritual level doesn't seem to admit much voice.
Does the spiritual level ever emit sounds?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
Only if you can speak in tongues.
Pentecostals, they got it right. Of all of them.
Yeah.
I wonder if Google Translate can help with tongues.
I'm very good at basically making up nonsense, but that's just an easy one for the theists out there. But they're just basically using sentence structure, like uba, hana, uba, da, eh.
It's jazz. It's just jazz music. That's all it is.
Exactly, it's just jazz.
Anybody got
There's
any
a lot of good
arguments for
music.
God? Evidence for God? Something?
Hey, I noticed that you posted Bible scholarship study for the week topic is Richard C. Miller. What
For
are
last
the
time, yeah.
highlights? Pardon?
Of Miller. So yeah, Richard Miller's most famous book is called Resurrection and Reception: Early Christianity, and he was talking about the preponderance of evidence, which was known at the time and was cited by Christians in their defense of their own not being persecuted, to say that the Jesus story was not unusual, that it was a common story, that it was similar to all of the Roman and Hellenistic and other cultural stories around them of what's called a resurrection fable, or a translation fable, I'm sorry. In other words, whenever someone famous and holy dies and then appears to have no body, either the body disappears or their body leaves no bones when it's burned, or the empty tomb, or they rise from the dead in front of eyewitnesses in a dramatic fashion. Any of those stories was a familiar type of story called a translation fable, which means that you ascended to live with the gods, that either they adopted you as a worthy divine hero, or that you were somehow descended from the gods and just rejoined your family upon leaving the mortal world that you were, visiting as a part human, part god. This was a normal thing, and the Christians said, "Hey, look, we're not weird. Don't persecute us because this is a normal thing." And I read the quote to people from the very first chapter of Resurrection and Reception in Early Christianity. The first quote in the book is just literally a speech by Justin, the first apologist of Christianity, saying, "Hey, we're just like you. Don't kill us. We're normal. We have the same beliefs you do." And he listed off like 30 or 40 Roman and Hellenistic examples of similar beliefs to the Jesus resurrection story.
See, we're just like you.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that this idea of emulating gods, Christianity capitalized on it in very early times. I'm hoping you'll correct me if I'm wrong on this. I'm sure you will, and I welcome it. That like eating the cracker and drinking the wine are kind of like symbolism, obviously, of eating Christ and drinking his blood. And
Totally
so,
normal.
and then by people doing that, they're kind of taking some older cannibalistic ideas that some tribes had of they're gaining some of the abilities or capabilities of whoever they ate or drank from. Do you know much about this aspect, IX?
A little bit. I was just watching some stuff by Kriegenfurt. So Kriegenfurt is a Proto-Indo-European scholar, and you can find his YouTube channel. And so he's studying stuff that came before written history, the stuff that even the Sumerians got their stuff from. Because it turns out that there's dozens and dozens of cultures that are all migration groups that originated from the same area around the Black Sea region in the Baltic area. And that if you look at all their beliefs, you look at all their language, you look at all their genetics, you look at all their material culture, you can see the material development from the source. So they have similar beliefs, they have similar words. And so that's why we have all these languages all over Eurasia with the word pater, father. That's why we have words like our oldest religious stories can be reconstructed. And one of those stories is the nectar of the gods, the ambrosia of the gods, the wisdom giving drink, etc., which is in Norse very, very straightforwardly, there was this magic that gave all wisdom, and the gods had it, and Odin wanted it, so he devised a plan to steal it. But when he was running away with it all in his mouth, he got smacked and he dropped some of it on the ground. Everywhere that it touched the ground, that's where the magic plants grow that humans can imbibe, that will give them the wisdom. And so this became many different versions and many different cultures, but all of these Zoroastrians have a story that there's a special drink that you drink that's a holy sacred drink that gives you knowledge of God or the gods. And it goes all the way back.
Typical guy not cleaning up after himself, it sounds like a little bit there too.
Got a guy in the
Yeah.
audience with his hand up.
And just a quick
Yeah.
claim on what you were saying, Ix. At least a little bit further back, there is no good evidence that Jesus ever was put into an empty tomb. And so if any Christian wants to talk about that, I'd be highly fascinated. There's a claim going around that Bert Ehrman supports the claim that he was, but he actually thinks that it was probably a mass grave.
Thank you, IX, for all that. It was very interesting. Apollo the Legend, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, well, just one thing I want to say. Well, good thing I'm not a Christian to answer that, but hello, T-Jump. How are you doing, bro?
All right.
Yeah, I'm doing fine, too. I was just going to ask you a question, which is, if someone was to be like a moral realist and they were to define the morality to be a rock, do you think that qualifies them to be a moral realist?
Only if they have some kind of evidence that in reality what morality is corresponds to the rock.
But at the same time, they're just going to define a rock or morality to be any action, like a moral action is just any action which does not involve tripping over a
Definitions
rock,
don't
for
matter.
example.
Only idiots care about definitions. What matters is what reality says. So if your rock is a Platonic object and that Platonic object is the moral object, then yes, you can be a moral realist. If you think it's like a Platonic rock, sure. But what matters is if
I think you
have
made an
evidence.
interesting claim. I think you made a very interesting claim, Tom Jump, when you said that definitions don't matter. But like when you debate people, obviously you want to like basically give them an idea of what you're talking about, which is why I say, under my view, morality is an imposition of will. Do you think that's irrelevant to tell them, or do you think it's irrelevant to detail?
T-Jump, just give me a sec. Apollo, I noticed that you were just, T-Jump hadn't quite finished what he was saying and you'd cut him off. What we like to do on this show is...
Go ahead, Tom. Go for it.
Yeah, just give people a chance to finish what they're saying, and we're glad to go back and forth. So please keep that in mind.
Yeah, my deepest apologies for that, sir.
Yeah, no problem. I figured it was maybe a microphone issue. Thank you. Go ahead, T-Jump.
What? Yeah. I don't think I had anything else to say.
Okay, cool. I guess he was mistaken or something, but like I was just basically saying that like, well, you said that definitions are like an irrelevant detail really in moral discourses. But then when I hear you participate in moral
You're confusing
discourses-
epistemology and ontology. So epistemology, like when we're trying to communicate, definitions matter. To ontology, definitions don't matter. You don't get to make up definitions about ontology. Ontology is reality. Reality gets to tell you what the definitions are. So you personally making up a definition of what you mean, reality doesn't care what you think. You are nobody. You are nothing. Your personal definitions don't matter to reality.
Okay, so obviously the personal definitions aren't going to matter to reality itself, because reality is going to be something which is like, I guess if you're like an external world realist, you're going to say that there's a mind-independent world out there, and obviously definitions are intentional, or they're going to be something which is mental. So
yes,
something which is mental is going to be something which is related to it. Yeah. So yeah, of course I agree with that specific part, but then there's going to be something else. Like I think like you're stepping into a different territory, right? What I'm really talking about here is like before determining whether some object X or some variable X is mind independent or mind dependent, you have to agree that we have to understand what this thing actually is. Like, how do I know that morality is objective without even knowing what you mean by morality? I need to know what you mean by morality, then I make an extrapolation on its ontology. You'd agree with this, right?
That's why we start with phenomenon. When we're talking about something and questioning whether or not it's objective or subjective, we start with the phenomenon to which we are referring to. When talking about morality, we're talking about the moral intuitions, moral progress, moral dilemmas. These things are what we're talking about when we're talking about morality. And the question is what is the cause of these things, and is the substance of these things subjective or objective?
Well, obviously the moral intuitions are subjective, right? All of these things you're talking about are subjective phenomena. But what moral realist tries to do, which I have no issue with, is when they say all of these subjective phenomena, these exponendum, as people would like to say, are things which are explained by some objective feature of the world, which is going to be morality as a concept.
Clearly. So there's a phenomenon. We want to know if the phenomenon is subjective mental states or caused by some objective phenomenon. Yes, that is the point. So the phenomenon.
Not quite.
No,
Sure.
that's exactly.
We're not
correct.
trying to figure out whether the phenomenon is subjective. We're trying to figure out what is the best explanation for these phenomenon.
No,
and that would
you're
be
not
something
understanding.
objective.
Is the phenomenon caused by something subjective or caused by something objective? This is shorthand, say it's subjective or objective. Very easy English, not too hard to understand. So if the cause is like, no, that is true. If you disagree, you're just a dumbass. So if the cause of our intuitions is like a Platonic object, independent of a mind, then morality is objective. If the cause is purely like evolution or something, then it's subjective. But we don't care about that, because your question was, how do we determine what we're talking about in the conversation? And if what we're talking about when using the word morality as the moral phenomenon, which is moral intuitions, moral progress, and whatever else we refer to in referring to moral phenomenon, that is sufficient. Your question has been answered. There is no further definition added. There is no further meaning added. Morality refers to the things which we refer to as moral phenomenon, moral intuition, moral progress, whatever's causing them. Conversation over.
I was low-key cracking when you were talking about me being a dumbass a while ago, when my point was pretty accurate. In fact, I was basically saying to you that it could be like when we were talking about morality, like more realism versus anti-realism, we're comparing the exponents, right? And more realism can be the best exponent for the phenomenon without it actually causing the phenomenon. That's perfectly plausible.
What? No, that would not be the case. That would be dumb. Like, moralism can't be true, and it also be the case that it's not the truth maker of what makes moral statements true or false. That's literally stupid. Irrelevant to what your original question was. Your original question was definitions. I answered your question about definitions. The definition of what we're talking about in morality is moral phenomenon, which is moral intuition, moral progress, and dilemmas, or whatever else you want to add in that category. So that's the definition of morality, the phenomenon to which we refer to when using the word morality.
Wait, quick question. Why do you think the theory, sorry, that's my little sister. Why do you think the theory has to be a truth maker for the phenomenon?
Irrelevant to your original question. Do you admit that your original question has been answered fully?
I don't admit to that. I think it was answered improperly and wrongly and poorly.
Well, then you're an idiot, but you would have to actually like explain how, because I'm sure everybody else thinks that was a purely coherent answer. So did you have like an explanation of why you think that was an insufficient answer?
Oh, yeah, hold up. Give me a sec.
Do we have anybody else in the audience who has like arguments or other?
Yeah, I'm back. We're going outside for a second, but like I was saying, the reasons why there's an insufficient answer is because, for one, I think your response actually assumes in the background that the theory ought to be something which causes the
absolutely irrelevant to anything I said. Absolutely irrelevant to anything I said. Don't care.
Of course it is.
No, it's not. It's literally
irrelevant. It's relevant.
No, absolutely irrelevant. The question is how do we define
you want to give me my reasons as to why it's relevant?
Because, okay, I'll answer it again. It's because when we're talking about the definition of how we define morality, whether or not there's some kind of ontological cause is irrelevant. We don't care. What we're talking about is a phenomenon. What is the thing we use the word to refer to in reality? When we're talking about morality, we're saying moral intuitions, like I feel that is wrong or that is right. And the secondary question is whether or not those feelings correspond to something objective or subjective, but that doesn't matter, because when we're talking about morality, we're talking about those phenomenon. And you can say if there's a cause.
Yeah, but you seem to be mixing on one thing, which is when you made the claim that we're trying to investigate whether these phenomenon are being caused by something objective.
Yeah, that's a secondary question irrelevant to the definition. Secondary question irrelevant to the conversation. If you can't follow the conversation, we're just going to kick you to the stage. So.
Oh, I'm following this better than you, Tom.
No,
don't worry about
it. Goodbye. Next.
Yeah, next person here is Bob Celeste. Thank you for joining us. How are you today?
Good. You guys are anti-realists. Are you guys more realists in this call? Some of you.
Yes.
So atheism doesn't take a position on morality, and so you're going to find different moral positions from different atheists, and you'll find a plethora in this room. But if you're looking for a moral realist, Tom Jump definitely is on.
All right. Well, What makes an act good or bad?
It corresponds to the substance of morality in the universe.
I was watching a conversation you were having, like I think a year or some change ago, came into my algorithm because you're so popular. You said something like, "What is good, like in the best possible world," or something. Do you still own that view, or have you moved from that?
Sort of. The best possible world is like the highest instantiation of morality. What is the good would be like the moral field. So morality is a field in physics, in my view, essentially, and good is what corresponds to that field. And then the maximization of good would be the best of all possible worlds. So what the good action would be, that action that would be the correct one in the best of all possible worlds.
And you think that's like epistemically accessible?
Sort of.
Do you consider yourself sympathetic to Sam Harris, his idea of the moral landscape, and
No.
how we can okay, because he has an idea where you can derive morals from imagining the worst possible pain and like the best possible pleasure, and just using these as like some sort of intuitions about what good and bad is. I don't know if you're in agreement with that.
Well, that's a way to use intuitions to try to understand morality, which is what everyone in moral philosophy is doing. But I don't agree with his conclusion.
Okay, so suppose, okay, if what is good is gonna just be the maximization of, it's not pleasure for you, right? It's like, it's not, is it a utility? Like, are you?
So I think morality has nothing to do with any of those words. I think morality is, again, a law of physics. There's something in physics that governs morality, and it affects our brains, and we come up with words to describe it, but the words are insufficient to describe it. And so I think the best way to define what a perfectly moral world would look like, which would be a world governed by this moral force above all others, essentially, is a world where it's impossible to force people to do things they don't consent to doing. But morality isn't governed by this statement. It's governed by the law of physics.
Do you think that there is a possible world where we can't force anybody to do anything?
Yes, that's clearly logically possible.
I mean, it's logically possible. I'm asking if it's nomologically possible.
Possible worlds means logically possible. So if it's logically possible, that's a possible world.
Yeah, but something can be logically possible, like so they could be like formally represented that like doesn't actually play out that way in the world.
Right.
So
but
I'm
you
just
asked,
wondering.
You asked the question: is there a possible world? That word in philosophy means logically possible. Is there a logically possible world? So that's all it means. So the answer to that question is yes. Now, if you're asking, is it physically possible given our current laws of physics? The answer is still yes. Still possible if we could control the laws of physics to do that.
Okay, so you think that it is possible that like you think it's possible that there's a world where nobody is capable of forcing another person to do stuff?
Again, when you say a world, you're talking about like logically possible. So yes, obviously, if you're talking about, is it possible to make this world given our laws of physics? The answer is also yes, but you need to clarify your language here because you keep using logically possible when I don't think you mean to.
Yeah, well, the modal scope I'm talking about is just physical, and you're saying yes, it is possible to create that world. And I'm just wondering like how we have access to that world, because I think it's like in the nature of us as like organisms and stuff like that, and the way our cognition works, that we're, so long as we are the same kind of thing, like we are going to be able to be doing these things, like forcing people to do stuff. So I don't know how that becomes, impossible under any given frame of reference if we're talking about human beings with thoughts and desires. And
yeah, so it sounds like you have the Christian bias that there's some ingrained evil in humans, and as long as we're humans there will be evil or something. That's just wrong. So like we can place physical limitations using the laws of physics on people so they can't harm other people, like give everyone a personal force field. Problem solved. All shootings are solved. All stabbings gone. 100% gone. So we can place physical limitations on people by like barriers, like force fields, and it doesn't matter what their constitution or their psychology is. They can't harm anybody else. So there are clearly physical things we can change about the universe without changing anything about how people are to mitigate evil.
Okay, so the best scenario is that essentially nobody is able to force somebody else to do something. But wouldn't we be in virtue of that just like forcing people not to force other people to do stuff?
No, because your will only applies to yourself and your property. So the rule is you're not allowed to force people to do things they don't consent to doing. And so if your consent only applies to yourself, and if you want to do something to somebody else, that would take their consent. And restricting your ability to harm them is not a violation of your consent, it's protection of theirs. So no, there's nothing self-contradictory about that.
Why can't it be both?
It's just not how I use the word. So you can make up a new definition of what you think the word should mean. It's just not what mine means in my model.
So if I want to cross the street and some like big burly guy like pushes me back, like, nope, you're not going over there. Like, he's definitely using force to like stop me from doing something I want to do.
Again, so as I just stated, the definition of your will only applies to yourself and your property. So if it's his street, you have no right to walk into his street. It's his property. And so you have a right to walk into your street, and you can do anything you want with your street. But you have no right to walk into his street. And so if you're trying to walk into someone else's property, they have a right to not let you into their property.
Are we talking about like legal rights or?
No, this would be laws of physics in this case. So they have a universe.
So
you have a universe, and if you want to go into their universe, they can say no, and that would be like the big burly guy stopping you.
Okay, so their right is like a physical property.
Yep.
The right to property is like a physical property.
No, they would literally have physical ownership over the universe. They would control it like a god would kind of control it. And so if you tried to enter it, they would literally be able to prevent you from entering it. So they would physically have all rights to control everything about their universe, including whether or not you enter it. So the legal rights is irrelevant here. They just literally own the universe because they control it.
So this sounds very like sci-fi fantasy almost, right? Like the ideal world where like we have force fields around people and this sort of like utopia, but obviously this isn't like feasible now. I'm just curious, like if you just view like good actions as that which approximate that ideal, basically. Like
no. So like the
multiple
best
universes,
the best
sorry, multiple universes sounds very much like a fantasy, like science fiction too.
Yeah, I agree.
So does the
but
from Sky Daddy. I think that's more science fiction, but it's irrelevant.
No, I agree.
More science fantasy too.
So the point here is that if you think about what action would be moral in the best of all possible worlds, you can use that as a guide to do the most moral action you possibly can in the pragmatic situation. So if doesn't mean it's the right action. Doing the pragmatic action isn't moral, but you can use what would be good in the best of all possible worlds, which would be moral, as a guide to get as close as possible given your limitations. So you asked, is getting the closest possible, is that the moral action? The answer is no. It's just the closest you can get to the moral action.
Okay. I am just sort of confused on really what in principle makes an act that I do now good or bad. If it's not like pragmatic, trying to like approximate like the ideal best situation. Yeah, I'm just not quite sure with your view, like what actually makes things good or bad.
If it's a voluntary assistance of will, it's moral. If it's an involuntary imposition of will, it's immoral. So forcing people to do things they don't consent to doing, that's immoral. Helping people to do things they want to do, that's moral.
I just feel like there's these scenarios for you where like you're forcing somebody to not do something that you don't like, but you're like, no, because that thing they're doing imposes on somebody else. But yeah, that's the case. But it's still forcing them. So I just
so the force isn't immoral. It's like if they consent to the force, it's perfectly moral to force them. So you're confusing the two statements and saying and treating them individually, the forcing people to do things and ignoring the consent of their property part. So the whole statement of morality is it's immoral to force people to do things they don't consent to doing to themselves and their property. It is not immoral to prevent them from doing things they want to your property. You have every right to stop them from doing whatever they want with your property. Totally fine. So you're confusing the first statement, which is just the forcing people to do things they don't consent to, and thinking it applies to anything that they want. So if I want to own you as a slave and you stop me, is that immoral? No, because it's the two parts combined that make something moral, not just the first half of the sentence.
Okay, and just how did you come to this sort of like moral knowledge, you think? Like, do you have like some sort of like demonstration in literal physics, or
looking at patterns in moral intuition and moral progress and moral dilemmas and trying to solve those patterns. And then that's how I built the hypothesis. And then to confirm the hypothesis, you make predictions about the future. And if you get those predictions right, that would be hard empirical evidence.
All right. I just think you're saying I looked at some moral behaviors and it seems to be the way that the world works. So you're just trying to sort of provide
that's all of
like
science.
A behavioral
So that's
description.
not a criticism. That's all of science. That's everything science does. We look at the world and think, I think this is how the world works. Make some predictions, get the predictions right. That's good evidence. That's literally all of science.
Oh, sure. So if you're just taking it that like, yeah, I just have some like sort of assumption about the way that the world works, and
again, that's all science.
I'm just going to use that. Yeah, you're just using it as an epistemic starting point. No, that's fine.
That's a hypothesis, yes. And then you make predictions and you try to confirm those predictions, and then that's evidence.
Okay, so do you think that? So I don't know. It just seems. Are you like an ethical pragmatist or something though?
No.
Like my best like guess is just going to be what makes something right, or
no, like literally nothing I said would imply that. So my best
no,
guess
I just think
my
like
best
you're
guess. Like
yeah.
I think I'm right about morality, so it's my best guess. And if I'm right, then what makes something moral has nothing to do with me or my guesses. My guesses are just my hypotheses.
Wait, how is that the case? If it is your hypothesis and your hypothesis is going to be pretty much the truth maker, I just
no, literally
how's it not
nothing
to do?
I said indicates that my hypothesis is a truth maker. My hypothesis is there's a law of physics that governs morality, and the law of physics is the truth maker. I'm just trying to discover it.
And do you think it's discoverable, the sort of physical law
Yes,
of morality?
Yes.
How?
Same way we discover any law. We'll literally be able to measure it in the future.
Through what means? Do you have an idea about through what means? Like how we're going to go about doing it?
The same thing we do in every physics. It will be a law of physics, just like every other law. We'll literally be able to measure it with better instruments.
I feel like we're just arbitrarily saying, yeah, it's like a physical thing, the sort of like moral order, right? But you don't really have any reason to believe that, apart from
everything in the universe is governed by laws of physics. And so if anything exists, it's more plausibly a law of physics than anything else.
Yeah, but things can exist in multiple senses. Surely abstract them, like language, for example.
They literally don't exist. Abstract objects don't
exist.
Okay.
Okay, I'm under the impression that yeah, like morals just don't exist. Like what when somebody says like point to the goodness or point to the badness, you're gonna say, yeah, it's something in the physical world, but where?
Law of physics, everywhere, just like gravity.
How can you demonstrate that?
Well, in the future, with novel predictions, and if I get them right, that would be how.
I feel like it's sort of weak to just make an appeal to a future that may or may not be actualized because you don't
asked
have an
how.
explanation.
You asked how could you demonstrate?
Yeah, I know, but
again, that's fully sufficient. Like,
how is it sufficient to say like I don't know what makes something right or wrong, but maybe we'll be able to do it with science?
That's a thing we do all the time, and it's happened literally many times in history. Faraday himself literally did that with electricity and light and x-rays and flight faster than the speed of sound. That's a thing in science that happens all the time.
Alrighty, I mean, I understand your view. Again, I don't think it really answers like how you know it. I think it's more like, hey, maybe we'll know how I'm right.
Right.
At some
it's a
point,
hypothesis that makes predictions, and if the predictions are confirmed, then that would be the evidence. So I never said we had confirmed predictions yet.
Okay.
Science of the gap.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it isn't. Yeah, I don't think it holds up against any reasonable scrutiny. I think it's really easy for somebody to just say, well, I deny this sort of law of physics of morality. There's no sort of evidence of it whatsoever. We're just saying like there are these other laws of physics, so they govern appearances we have. So these moral appearances we have to also be governed by some same physical forces.
Yeah, you seem to be confused because, again, this is a hypothesis. I never said this was a proven theory. Like, I'm not a theist who says God's there and there's actual evidence of it. No, this is a hypothesis which does not currently have evidence, which I make predictions which could have evidence in the future. So I think you're confusing the claim here. It's not that this has evidence. It's a hypothesis. It's like string theory. It's like, yeah, we don't have evidence for it yet. That's not the claim.
Understood. Okay. Good chatting with you. That's about it.
All right, cool.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate the good conversation. Our next guest is Reaper. Welcome, Reaper. Thank you for joining us.
I apologize. My mic's kind of bugging out. Does it sound okay, or is it tripping?
Sounds
Your
good.
sound is great. Well, what have you got for us today?
Yeah, I kind of have a question for T-Jump, but I think anybody here can kind of jump in on it if they feel the need to, or they have a personal opinion on it. T-Jump, I've kind of watched your last discussions.
Anybody can jump in. Ha
Hi.
Yeah, that is good.
Okay, but T-Jump, from watching your you know the legend guy that you put off stage. I mean, I have no issues with either of you. I just want to ask a question about it personally. Recently I've been looking into epistemology, and I recently started taking the topic of whether do you believe classical logic is objective in a sense, and how would you essentially prove that?
I think logic is a language that humans made up in order to describe reality, and it's possible
Okay, then.
that there's a correct logic. Like there's a page on the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy titled "The Right Logic?" ? Is there a logic that accurately describes reality? I think probably. I think I like standard logic, so I just guess standard logic does it, but I don't know.
I mean, I probably should ask more of a broader question. I guess the question I'm trying to get across is, I think in a sense to ground some form of modality or possible worlds, you kind of have to have a foundation of epistemology. Would you agree?
Sure. I mean, I guess what you mean
Okay.
by ground. I don't know.
So I'm just going to ask you, what grounding in epistemology do you have to argue that there is some possible world in existence, or possible, I should say?
I'm not sure what you mean. So I grant possible worlds as a philosophical argument. I don't know if there are actually philosophical worlds or if there's like a necessitarian only one possible world. Like I don't actually care. So I only use possible worlds as like a philosophical argument. I don't think they actually exist.
I guess let me explain what I'm trying to convey a bit. Let me kind of explain what I'm trying to convey a bit more. You're a moralist, obviously, so you believe in some sense there is some universal truth about morality.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to try to say is that I don't believe a universal truth exists, and I'm making an ontological commitment to speak with you, but I don't believe the language I'm presenting to you is true itself. So I'm asking
what do you mean when you say you
grounding
don't believe a universal truth exists? Like you mean like
I'll give an example that I watched of a debate a while back. Me and you, in an empirical sense, you can look through a scope and you could see the moon. Now, I can look through the scope and say, oh, well, I see the moon, but that does not mean entirely that I believe it's there. I can have false sensory data, and it once again calls into question whether empirical data is correct or if it's accurate.
Yeah, who cares about empirical data? So can you believe
then let's go to rationalism.
Can you believe you exist and be wrong?
Exist and be wrong?
Yeah. Can you believe that you exist and be wrong?
Well, I can be a brain in a vac, but if that's what you mean by exist, I guess.
It still exists. So is it can you believe you exist and be wrong?
Yes.
Okay, how?
I mean, okay, well, you saying be wrong in the sense of existence?
Yes. So I don't care how you exist. Brain in a vat, fart of Venus's electrical signals. I don't care. I don't care how you exist. It makes no difference. You existing means you have some kind of conscious experience, and that conscious experience must be something in reality caused by I don't care what. Brain in a vat, electrical, farts, matrix. Don't care. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You still exist. That conscious experience is an existing thing that was created in some sense. Can you believe your conscious experience exists and be wrong? The correct answer is no.
Okay, so wait, could I kind of, because there's a few things you said on that I kind of have a few issues with, so I was going to try to address a bit of the statement you said, well, a few statements actually, but okay.
Okay, all right, all right,
no. Go ahead. Randolph, are you okay? What's going on?
Sorry, that my fault. I thought you guys were talking over each other. Something started in the background. My apologies. Go ahead.
You're good. You're good. Okay, so I get it. You're trying to ground there's some form of knowing that we exist. I think that if me and you were to come into a conversation, we both are.
I don't care if you know. I don't care if you know. So.
Well, I'm agreeing. I know that I exist 100%, and you exist.
Cool.
But the problem is,
wouldn't that qualify as like a universal truth that you said? There aren't any,
but that's not word. That's no. It's a considerable truth, not an objective truth. I can say I know it, but I can be wrong in the sense of knowing it.
What? How is that not an objective truth?
Because an example, I could say I exist, but the problem is I have no reasoning of why I exist. If you remain skeptical at some point in time, we have to bite the bullet to have the conversation. You do.
No, objective
What do you think
truths.
an objective
Objective
truth
truths
is?
are true independent of whether anybody knows it or has any reason to know it. They're just things that are true about reality.
Okay, then, so you're asking me to give a subjective perspective. You're asking me to give something subjective and saying, is it objective because it's subjective? That's just contradictory in itself.
No. So you can know an objective truth about the universe. That's true for everybody else, whether or not they know it, which is that you exist. Your existence is an objective truth about reality that's true for everyone, whether or not they know it, including you. It's true for you, even if you don't know it. So this truth is true independent of every opinion, of every subjective fact of the universe. They are all irrelevant. This is an objective truth. You exist.
Yeah, and my next question is going to be, like, teach. I'm not even on some like really ratting or being dishonest type shit. A genuine question. Tell me how you would go about that to prove that.
I don't care if I can prove it. I literally just said it doesn't matter if you can prove it.
It's not a universal truth if it's not just subjective reasoning.
Well, again, so it's objective. Like, you can't believe you exist and be wrong. Therefore, you objectively exist. Since you believe you exist, you exist. And you exist objectively. Even if you didn't believe you exist, you'd still exist. Even if nobody else believes you exist, you would still exist. Even if no one could prove you exist, you still exist. So the subjective truths of anyone's minds, whether they have knowledge, whether it can be proven, irrelevant, you still exist. That's an objective truth for everyone and everything.
There's a few issues with that because I can believe in, oh, there's a rocket flying, turtle flying in the sky. It doesn't mean in a sense that it's actually true. I can try to apply some type of reasoning of why it is the case. But once again, no matter what, in a scope, you can also say the equal interpretation is, oh, well, you could have been inaccurate. Every single possible thing you could say to me of why something is a universal truth, I can just say an exact counter to it, and it would just be called into question or result in some probability form and not definitively.
Well, I'm not giving you justifications for why that's an objective truth. I'm giving you the definition of what an objective truth is. An objective truth is something that's true independent of any opinion, right? So if you think you exist and it's not possible for you to think you exist and be wrong, that means by definition, you exist objectively. So
that's already begging the question because I called in the question in the first place whether I can say I exist or try to believe I exist, but a statement being true is not determined by structural integrity at all.
This has nothing to do with structural integrity. This is a logical entailment of the statement. Well, if you believe you exist, I don't care if you believe you exist. I don't care if you're capable of believing you exist. If anyone believes they exist, is it possible for that same person to be wrong? The answer is no. It is literally impossible.
Well, because that's begging the question, because you're already saying, oh, it's objective, because I can't give reasoning because it's mine independently. But the problem is for us to say something is objective, we have to have a reasoning of why it fits that category in itself, and you're completely just missing that point.
What?
Yes?
No.
Like what?
No. So if someone
I can just say it's objective, you're wrong.
If someone believes they exist, can they be wrong? The answer is no. They can't be wrong. They must exist in the first place in order to have the belief that they exist. Therefore, if someone believes they exist, objectively, they exist because they must exist first to have beliefs. That's a logical entailment. And so it doesn't matter. Like, everything could be wrong with their brain. They could be Descartes' demon could just make everything with their brain wrong, and they would still not be wrong that they exist. They would still be right, because in order to have beliefs, you must exist first. And existence in that case is objective by definition.
Now, there was something you said in that I kind of wanted to talk about, but it's because you're kind of appealing to more of a classical approach of why something is like necessary, and I was already calling the question whether logical is universal in a sense.
Okay, well then you'd have to answer the question: can someone believe they exist and be wrong?
And I already said that can be the case. Yes.
Yeah, how?
Because in the first place, at some point in time to have a conversation, we have to bite the bullet for language, but it doesn't mean it's true in a sense of accordance to reality.
Yeah, so I'm asking you, how in reality is it possible to believe you exist while not existing?
That's why I'm saying I'm disagreeing with the laws of thought itself.
Okay, so it's zeros.
Approach.
Right, so you can't give a coherent logical explanation of how it's possible to believe you exist and be wrong.
Well, because T-Jump, you keep going backwards and saying, oh, well, it's dependent upon classical logic position.
Well, no,
but I'm
this is
calling
true
into
in the
question
case
what
of
the laws
all
of thought are
logic.
true.
Non-standard logic grants
Okay,
this.
prove it.
Many-valued
And
logic grants this. Quantum logic grants
whoa,
this.
that's not how that works.
Yes, it
That's
is.
not true.
Yes, it is.
That's not true.
It is.
Can I prove that's not true?
Go ahead.
Please. Okay, so in many-valued logic, we can just say that there's different fundamental truths besides true or false. You keep accepting some binary or bivalent logic. That's just entirely disappointing. That
No.
entirely erases the point of saying many-valued logic.
No.
Yes.
The many-valued logic doesn't
With the
mean that it's
definition?
always the case that there are only not true or not false statements. There can still be true statements in many-valued logic.
Hold up. Do you want me to define many-valued logic in a way? Because I feel like we're like defining this really wrong.
Okay, so if you don't know this, in many-valued logic, having all of the possibilities be true and having a true statement is definitely possible in many-valued logic. Do you not know this?
That's not what I'm attacking, and you're kind of just jumping around.
That is
while
literally
I
what you're
attack again.
attacking here. So
Yeah, that's
it
not
is
what I did.
possible to have a true statement in many-valued logic. You can have a true
Can
statement.
I give clarity? Can I give clarity to my
What?
position, please?
No,
jump before we go any further?
because
Oh, okay, then
you're
so
not
if you don't know my
understanding.
position, how are you
So
attacking it?
many-valued logic says there's multiple possibilities, right? True and false aren't the
It
only
says
two
there's a-
possibilities. There's lots of
Okay,
middle grounds,
continue.
right?
Mhm.
Does that mean there can be
Yes.
true statements?
You could say it can be, but doesn't mean it is true
No,
statements.
no, no.
That's what I'm attacking.
You're not. So
I'm
in
saying
many-valued-
yes.
stop. Yes, in many-valued logic, there can be true statements. They're just true.
Mhm.
Period. Full stop. And
But
there
I'm
are
saying
going to
that-
be certain statements that are going to be true. Full period. Right? In many-valued
But-
logic, there are true statements.
That's
And
where
this is going to be one of them.
you're. Go ahead.
This is going to be one of them. This is the one of those that they
Okay,
grant.
well, let me attack. Well, I'm gonna just apply the possibility, like, oh, well, why can't it just be some form of excluded middle where it's a logical contradiction? And what are you gonna do then?
Logical contradiction that I believe I exist without existing.
So it's just I can say it's like I'm talking the question classical logic itself by using many valued logic, which you accepted. So I don't have to just
Because the
appeal to some
people-
binary or
the
bivalent
actual
logic.
philosophers who actually accept many-valued logic grant what I'm saying. They're like, yes, that is true. Happy to grant that's
Well,
true.
I can say that it doesn't result in true or false. It results in the excluded middle. I can just argue that, and you can't get out of it.
Go
Like, not
ahead.
at all.
Go ahead and write a paper explaining how using many-valued logic someone can believe they exist and be wrong. Publish the paper, and then
Well,
I will
that's
take
not
your
what I'm
argument
doing.
seriously.
Wait, no. That's you. That's why I'm saying I tried to give clarity to that position a minute ago, but you kind of said no. You don't want
so
me to give
let me
it.
clarify my argument.
I'm not
My
saying-
argument here is that
Wait,
you
what?
know nothing about many-valued logic. You are trying to apply it inappropriately. You don't understand what you're doing. And if you think you do,
Mhm.
then please publish a paper where you actually talk to philosophers who do know what they're talking about, who can explain this to you better than I can, because you don't.
Okay. T-jump. I feel like we're kind of misinterpreting what I was saying. I'm saying that someone can say, oh, they exist, but for them to exist, they must have the thought they exist. And I'm saying, oh, well, in that case, I'm saying no when it results in a logical contradiction. If it's a logical contradiction, it's dealing with something outside of just the basic binary values, which I can just say, oh, well, that can just result in some form of pluralistic position. It could result in some position of many value logic being the excluded middle. I can just argue that, and I'm calling into question
You
logic
can't.
by doing
No,
that, and you're
you
not
can't.
grounding it.
You can't. So you don't
Yes, I
understand.
can. I'm
No,
literally
stop,
doing
stop.
it.
Listen. So you
What?
don't understand many-valued logic, and if you
I
when
do.
you
I
try,
can
you
define
don't.
it for you if
You
you
don't.
want.
You don't. So if you
I
think
do.
you can, then you need to publish a
Mhm.
paper where actual professors can evaluate this and tell you why you have no idea what you're doing. And if you get it published,
So you can't
and they're like,
defend this
sure.
argument.
No, I've
in
already
simple terms.
I've already defeated you on this. Like, professors.
No, you haven't. You
I have.
lost,
Stop
like,
talking.
easily.
Stop talking. Don't interrupt me again, or I'm going to kick you off the stage. Professors who
Mhm.
understand many-valued logic, I've talked with them on this. They grant me. They say, yes, you are correct, T-Jump. You are correct in every case in this one. And so what you're saying doesn't accurately represent many-valued logic. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Just-
Your head is up
okay.
your ass. So if you think
Okay.
you have a new understanding of
Mhm.
many-valued logic that goes beyond all of the professors I've talked to,
Yeah.
then you need to publish a paper on this and just get it accepted by the academic authorities that say, yes, in many-valued logic, you can think you exist while not existing. Go for it. And once you do that, then I will look at your paper and try to understand this, because you have, I'm fairly certain you have no idea what you're talking about. And you're just taking a
T-jump.
broad concept of many-valued logic and trying to
Mhm.
apply it to things that it does not apply to, and you have no idea what you're doing. So if you think you do, publish
That's
a paper.
not the argument. T-jump. Like
is.
I'm not
It
trying to
is.
like cut you off, but that's not the well. You can't sit here and say, oh, it is the argument. If I'm saying it's not the argument, I'm the one literally giving you the argument. Like, can I please address my point and then you can attack it? Like, tell me how it's wrong.
Okay, so the
Because
question was,
you asked
can
me
you
the
believe you
question-
exist and be wrong?
Mhm.
Can you believe you
And I'm
exist?
saying,
And you're saying
If I was to say no, if I was to say no, it will result in a logical contradiction. If it's a logical contradiction, it does not just appeal to some basic binary approach, which means it could be any of the possible truths outside of just true or false.
Right, so you're saying yes.
Which calls into question classical logic. Yes, 100%.
You're wrong. That's not how many-valued logic works. Go publish a paper.
Okay. So no refutation. I'll just.
I've already refuted it. Many-valued logic grants.
You didn't. You didn't understand my position. You didn't understand it at all.
Goodbye. So many-valued logic grants this. No, you cannot believe you exist to be wrong, even in many-valued logic. If you think that's incorrect, go publish a paper on it. Until then, don't bother me. Next.
Yeah. So next is Grim. Oh, Grim has disappeared. So the next one is why is it wrong to eat puppies? How are you? There. With a picture of a penguin.
Oh, he's there. Okay.
You're muted. I don't know. You might have to unmute yourself before we can hear you.
He was server muted. I had to unserver mute him.
Oh, thank you. Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. How are all of you?
Why do you always get server muted? Like literally every time you come here, you're server muted.
Oh, I annoy a lot of people. Yeah, I had a question. Sorry?
I like you already.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I had a question that I brought up last time in regards to theological fatalism. I mean, okay, so I think you made a few mistakes in one of your videos, T-Jump, when you were speaking to this guy. The first one's pretty obvious mistake. I don't think you'll even like deny it's a mistake. He said that I wrote it down. The guy said that it's known but it's not determined, and you said that that's synonymous. Obviously those two terms are not synonymous.
For God. For God.
I don't think you'd. Sorry?
For God, for an omniscient God. So like not for literally everyone.
No, but those two terms. Yeah, but those two terms, something being known and something being determined are not synonymous, right?
Yeah, it's only synonymous for God, who knows literally everything.
But the guy said that it's known, but it's not determined.
Well, we were talking about a God, so we were applying it to that conversation.
Okay.
So like obviously you can know something like quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics isn't determined.
Are you trying to? Are you hoping to venture into justified true beliefs?
No, I mean I just challenged the original claim that
so let me give some context. So this is like
if an agent knows the future, then it's
wait, pause for a second. So this is the omniscience paradox. If God knows what you're going to do you have free will? That's the conversation we're talking about. So his argument is that God can know everything you're going to do, but you still have free will.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not arguing for that position. I just think those two things are compatible. And you seem to think that they're incompatible.
Right.
I don't really understand why.
Because if God knows everything you're going to do, then you don't have the ability to do otherwise. And the ability to do otherwise is what libertarian free will is defined as. And so if God already knows what you're going to do, there is no ability to do otherwise. Therefore, you don't have free will.
Right. Okay. When you say you can't do otherwise, what modality are you referring to?
What? I have no idea what you're asking there.
I'm asking when you say you can't do otherwise. I mean, that's a modal notion. So are you talking about logical possibility or?
I don't think that's defined in libertarian free will. I don't think they define it I think they usually define it as saying if you could go back in time and do it again, it could have a different outcome. That's usually how they define it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I don't really understand, because the way I understand libertarian free will is that your choices aren't determined by any antecedent conditions. You know, sort of like the agent is making the decision, and no amount of sort of arrangement of physical material or your experiences or things like that.
Well,
those things might influence your decision.
That's an irrelevant thing. That's not part of the definition. So definition of free will is the ability to do otherwise. So the point of the libertarian free will is to apply blame to the individual and say that you are wholly responsible for whatever evil thing you did, and it's not God's fault and it's not the world's fault. That's wrong. So that's logically wrong. And so the way they define it is simply as the ability to do otherwise. You have the ability to do otherwise. You chose to do X, therefore you are wholly responsible for doing X. And so the ability to do otherwise part is the key factor of libertarian free will. The not determined by antecedent causes is irrelevant here. Like if it doesn't make a difference. It's the fact that you could have done otherwise but didn't.
Yeah. So I guess that I understand the impossibility of those two in conjunction, right? That you can't do that you can't do. Okay, so I understand if God knows X and you do not X, right? I see those two as incompatible, right?
Yep.
But I think the incompatibility refers to both those two propositions, not to them individually, right? So I don't see the necessity of you having to do X just because God knows it, right? It's not necessary. I see the necessity of, it can't be the case that proposition A and proposition A be true and proposition B be false, right? That God knows you'll do X and you do X, right? The first one, if the first one is true, the second one can't be true. I can sort of write it down if we got a text.
Well, so I don't read the text chat anyway. So the question is if what's required for free will is the ability to do otherwise, that means that there must be a way to go back and redo the event and have God know that you were going to do X and you do Y. And that's not logically possible. That's a logical contradiction with an omniscient being. So it's not possible for God to know you do X and you do Y. Therefore, it's not possible for you to do otherwise than X. Therefore, you don't have free will.
So no. That's the mistake. So you're applying that's the modal fallacy. So you're applying this sort of impossibility towards that you doing not X, right? Is there a text chat, by the way?
I don't read the text
chat. Yeah, there are some comments coming from the text chat, and I'd like to get into those in a moment.
Yeah, because I really like to write it down because.
Okay, so I'll just start off with somebody in our YouTube chat. Deconverted Man is saying that the ability to do pointless actions is what he thinks free will is. And then Jay Pasek has responded, couldn't reincarnation be considered a form of afterlife without a god or gods necessary? Deconverted Man's back, I'm not sure, because that would require some system to keep that going. What in nature could account for such a system? And then there's something in the Discord chat, but if you want to address that first, I'll hold aside for you.
Right, I was meaning that I could write down like the argument in modal logic, so it would be clear.
Oh yeah, just there's right next to this channel, this stage, you'll see something called Heathen Hangout. You can post it in there, and we'll be happy to, if you have a link to a source on it, I'll be happy to share that with our YouTube audience directly as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping to sort of like send it.
I'm not going to read
right
it.
now,
There
so-
is 0% chance I'm going to read it. So just explain
Oh,
your
what?
argument.
Okay, well, it's sort of got symbols and stuff.
I'm not going to
I'll
look
try
at
and-
it.
I'll try my
There's
best.
0% chance of me looking at it. You'd have to pay me.
Okay, well, okay, well,
So the answer, I
okay,
can just
give me
skip.
one
I can
sec.
just skip and give you the answer. The answer is, by the definition of free will, the ability to do otherwise. That means there has to be a possible world where you didn't do what God knew. And that isn't possible given omniscience. It's not possible. There's a contradiction between there being a possible world where you didn't do what God knew and God knowing you did X. Literally can't exist in the same possible world.
Okay, yeah, so okay, well, I'll just read out, because this is not really this isn't really accepted, really.
It is widely accepted in philosophy.
I mean, you said that last time, but you don't have a source for that.
I do, actually. The Stanford
Will you send me
Encyclopedia
the
of Philosophy on this exact problem. It's the one I actually listed last time.
Yeah, I know, and I read that, and there are many solutions to this
Which are not
concern.
widely accepted. The consensus is atheism.
Atheism has nothing to do with it. I mean, I was speaking to a
No,
PhD
the consensus is that
that
this is a problem.
Just 1 second. Just wait 1 second. Look, I was speaking to a PhD philosopher who is an atheist about this very concern, and he said that they're not incompatible. So atheism has nothing to do with it. I don't think any atheist philosopher is actually going to accept this either.
They do.
So
The vast majority
I'm
accept
asking
this.
you,
The vast majority accept this. I don't.
yeah, I'm asking you why. Look, the last time we spoke, I looked up this, right? I went to the Phil surveys. I tried to look up other philosophical surveys. I never found that. So I'm asking you, like, where is this source?
I don't care. I'm not going to do the research for you. Find it yourself. Most academic philosophers
But you're
agree
the
with
one
this.
that made the claim.
Yes, because I've actually
Yeah,
spoken
but
to the
you're saying that
philosophers.
most academic philosophers
Yes, they do.
agree.
If you don't
I'm
know this, you're
asking
just an
you.
idiot. This is like flat earther asking for references for the math of the curvature of the planet. Do it yourself. This is common knowledge. Common knowledge in philosophy.
So the PhD philosopher that had said that these two are not incompatible.
Ask him. Do the consensus
like
of experts in the field of philosophy agree that this debunks or produces an argument that makes the majority of evidence? So ask your philosophy friend, do the majority of philosophers in this field agree that the argument indicates more evidence that it is incompatible than it's compatible? He's going to say, yes, the majority of philosophers in the field agree this argument indicates it's more likely incompatible than compatible. The fact that there is a single logical interpretation to try and make it alternatives, most philosophers reject that garbage, and they agree that the consensus view is that it is more likely impossible than possible. Incompatible than possible.
Well, I'll ask him. I mean, I've looked it up on Phil surveys and other surveys, and I haven't been able to find that consensus. But I'll ask him.
Because that is not a poll. If you want a poll, go ask the philosophers individually. What is the view of people in your field?
Individually? What?
Yes. The philosophers are very well acquainted with the view of the field. So if you want to know what most philosophers think, go ask the philosophers. What do most philosophers in the field think? That's how you learn. So you can go, yes, that's literally what I do too. So I go talk with philosophers and what do most philosophers believe on this field? Do they accept that argument? And the theist will always say, no, most philosophers do not accept this argument. This is a minority position of the theists we make up, not accepted by the majority every single time, 100%. So this argument you're bringing is a minority position made up to appease a minority of theists that is not accepted by the consensus of experts in the field. And you can verify this. Go ask them. What did the majority of experts in the field think about this argument?
Okay, so, oh, sorry, wait. Sorry. Yeah, okay, I mean, regardless of what the majority thinks, I mean, you said the majority thinks that, and, like, I couldn't find that, so whatever.
Then
but
you're not
regardless,
asking people.
right,
Literally, the first thing you should do, ask the professors, the philosophers. What do the majority?
I just asked a PhD
you didn't.
and he said that
no, you just admitted you did not ask him. Go ask him. What do the majority of experts in the field think about this position?
Yeah, so I didn't ask him what the majority of theists or what the majority of philosophers think, right? I asked him what his view was, and he said that, yeah.
So I don't care about his view.
Yeah,
that's an anecdotal fallacy. So, we don't care about his view. What do the majority of experts in the field think about this issue?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I mean, regardless, I still think the argument sort of fails, and the reason it fails is because I think it commits the modal fallacy, meaning that
It does not.
So what's the modal fallacy?
I went through that last time. So it does not. It objectively does not.
I'm
So
asking
by the
what the
definition
modal
I'm
fallacy
using
is.
of what I'm using as the definition of the libertarian free will is the ability to do otherwise. If it is not possible for you to do an action that God does not know or God to be wrong, then it is not possible to have free will.
But no, but I'm asking you
I
what
don't
the modal
care.
fallacy
We went through that
is.
last time. That's been answered.
But you said
That's
it
been
doesn't
answered.
commit the modal
Yeah, that's
fallacy.
been
I'm
answered
asking you
last
what
time.
the modal
That's been
fallacy
answered
is.
last time.
No, I
That
mean,
was answered last time.
I
Last
didn't
time I'm
really have
repeating
a
this or I'm
clear-
kicking you off the stage. So that's been answered last time. Don't bring it up again. You have a new objection that I
Okay,
didn't
but-
answer already.
But yeah, no, I have, because I didn't bring this up last time, right? Last time
This
I
was
didn't
literally
really
a question
know
asked 50
that much.
times last time. I went up, I looked the definition, I read it, I showed it
What's
didn't.
not-
That was asked and answered. I'm not doing it again.
Look, I read the articles since we talked, so can I look? I'll just bring out the objection, right, rather than
No.
all this meta.
No, I'm not interested.
Wait, but
It does not commit the modal fallacy. You're not addressing the objection. If it is not logically possible or physically possible for you to do something that God didn't know, you don't have free will, because by definition, you don't have the ability to do otherwise.
no, you do have the ability to do otherwise.
If it's not logically possible to
It's
not
just
do the
one.
thing, you don't, by definition.
No, it is logic. So it's logic. So yeah. So this is the concern, right? That those two combined are impossible, right? It's impossible to have.
If you go back in time an infinitely many
anything
number of
very
times, will there ever be a single instance where you did not do what God knew you were going to do?
No.
Then it's not
Right?
possible to have free will.
Just because. No. Just because God knows that you'll do X doesn't mean that it's a necessary truth that you'll do X.
I don't care if it's a
right?
necessary truth.
It's
The
still
point of being able to do otherwise isn't a necessary truth. I don't care about necessary truth. I don't care about morality. None of that garbage matters. If there is not a single case where you can go back in time and not do the thing God knew, you don't have the ability to do otherwise.
Yeah, but I don't know what modality you're talking about.
I don't give a shit
right?
about
Because
modality. This is done. If you don't have an actual objection to what I just said, then you're agreeing with me. You don't have free will.
No, I'm trying to bring out the objection, right?
No,
You're
you
saying
just
that
agreed.
it's
You literally
like
agreed. It
must-
is not possible for you to go back in time and do something different than what God knew you're going to do. You agreed. You've already
No, I
admitted.
didn't.
You've already admitted I'm right, and you're bringing
No,
up
I didn't
semantical
say that.
irrelevancy.
I didn't. No, it's not semantical relevancies.
Is
Look,
it possible
I'm
to
saying
go
that
back in
you
time
won't.
and do something different than what God
I
knew?
can't finish the sentence. And
Just give me a yes
like,
or no. Is it possible to
it's
go back in time and do something different than what God knew you were going to do?
possible under what modality?
I don't give a shit. Is it possible? Will it ever happen? Is there any time in any
I
world
don't know what
where
you're
you
talking about,
actually
like-
go back in time and you will do something different? Will that happen?
It won't happen.
Then I'm
Right,
right.
but-
You
but that
congratulations.
doesn't
You've
mean-
admitted I'm right. Game over. Stop wasting my time with semantics.
No, but
That is
look,
the full
right,
context of
saying
the argument.
Right, look, just because it won't happen
That's
doesn't mean
all
that
I
you
need.
can't
That's
do
all I
otherwise
need from
and
argument. If it won't happen, you don't have free will.
Oh
That's
my
all I
gosh.
need. I don't give a shit about
But
any of
am
your
I allowed
semantics. I don't
to-
give a shit about any of the words or terminology. I don't give a shit. If you don't, if you'll never happen, you don't have the ability to do otherwise. End of discussion. No more semantics.
but
End of
You're
discussion.
conflating. You're conflating.
No,
the
this is by
modalities,
my
right? 'Cause I
definition.
don't
No,
know
there's no
what-
modalities here. By my definitions of the words I gave, that's all
No
you need.
modality.
Full of-
What?
No modalities. No more of the bullshit language game. I don't care. If you granted that sentence,
Bullshit
my
language.
argument works. End of discussion.
Okay, look. Maybe we can think about it like
No,
this.
there is
right?
no.
So,
You just granted the argument. You just admitted I was right. 100%. Game over. I won.
No, I didn't.
You literally did. Let's try it again. Will there ever be a case where you go back in time and you do a different action that God didn't know? Will that ever happen? Yes or no?
No, I don't think it will happen.
Thank you.
Right?
That's it.
But
That's
that
the
doesn't
end
mean-
of the discussion. There is no language game here. There's no modality here. There's no complicated philosophy here. That's the full extent of the argument. If you grant that, that is the
No,
argument
look,
I'm making.
no.
That's it. There's no more. You've granted it.
No. Look, just think about this, right? Like, if you have a B theory of time, right, then which actually is the consensus, not
No,
by
it's
a
not.
massive margin,
not.
but it
The consensus is
B
neither
theory of
A
time
nor
has
B.
30
The consensus
I
is neither A nor B.
Yeah, I know, but B theory of time is much greater than the A theory of time.
No, it's not.
It's like 33%.
Oh, and the A is
Yeah,
like
no,
32%.
the A theory of time has the consensus. No, I looked it up just this morning. Like, the A theory, field surveys, the A theory of time has like 14%, and the B theory of time has like 30%, if I remember correctly. Now, I might be mistaken. In which case,
I think it was like an even split.
no, I was correct. So, accept or lean towards the B theory is 26%, and then A theory is 15%. So I was a little bit off, but that's
Other
correct.
is 60%. 60% other. That's the consensus. Other.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying that B theory is far greater in percentage than A theory, and I think, and I'm not an expert on this, but I think that majority of physicists accept B theory as well.
No,
This is just
definitely
philosophers. So definite. Okay, well, maybe I'm mistaken there. Wait, let me just look it up. Do physicists? Oh, sorry. I'm not.
I think it's a snapshot of foundational attitudes towards quantum mechanics by Schlosshauser. I think is the polar physicist.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I have a concern that this argument, if it goes through, it's really only going to attack very, very few theists, right? Because first of all, and I think you agreed that it's not going to work on like
no. This should actually work
right?
on the vast majority of theists.
No, it won't.
Yes, it will.
No, it won't.
Yes, it will.
And the
So
point
your
is that,
your interpretation only applies to an extremely
am I
small
allowed to
minority.
finish a
One
single
sec.
sentence?
So your interpretation only applies to extremely small minority of academic philosopher theists. Most theists aren't. Most theists are average, everyday people. When they say libertarian free will, they mean the ability to do otherwise. They mean what I said. Now, the criticisms you're bringing about modality are like a dozen or 24 academic philosophers, theists. That's it. There's nobody who believes this garbage. Most theists do not believe this garbage. Well, the criticisms you're bringing up are just irrelevant to pretty much all of theism everywhere in the world. What I said is what theists actually mean, the ability to do otherwise. What I said applies to most theists. What you said applies to some cranky academic philosophers in a back room that have beliefs that have no basis in reality.
You still haven't really clarified what you mean when you say the ability to do
otherwise. I have fully 100% clarified that. I literally did. The ability to go back in time and do a different thing.
Under what modality?
Doesn't mean a goddamn thing. The ability to go back in time and do a different thing than what God knows. That's literally what I mean. That's what I said. There's no bullshit language game here. My definition has been fully grasped and understood by everyone, academic philosopher to everyday Joe. Modalities are irrelevant.
No, I don't think that's irrelevant at all. Look,
literally is. You're done on this topic. Don't bring up modalities again. You have granted my argument. You have admitted I was right multiple times.
No. So if all you mean is that in some sense you can't do X, then sure.
Can you go back in time and do a thing different than what God knew you would do? Yes or no?
Am I allowed to finish a sentence, please?
No, because you keep bringing up irrelevancies. Irrelevant semantic bullshit that I don't care about.
Oh my God. So yeah, so in some sense you can't do otherwise, but I think the can't there applies to the conjunction of A and sort of.
I don't give a shit about all the semantics.
Right?
The semantics is irrelevant. This is nothing. This is dumbass nonsense.
It's not semantics.
Can you go back in time and do something different than what God knew you would do? If I go back a billion times, will I ever do not X?
I think in some sense, yeah. In some sense, no. Right. The point is that like,
God knows I will do X. God knows I will do X. If I go back a billion times, will I ever do Y?
I mean, if we sort of presuppose like B theory. No, like the past and the
No,
future are
there
just
you
the
go.
same.
We're
right?
done. The conversation over. You don't need
But-
any of this modality bullshit, none of this language
Yeah, but that doesn't
bullshit.
mean
That's
that.
it.
But that doesn't mean. No, but that doesn't mean that, like, in every sense, you can't do otherwise.
I don't
right?
give a shit
So
about every
the
sense.
point is
You
that,
answered
like,
my
what-
question. All of my
let's
definitions,
say-
all of my meanings were covered
Look.
in that one sentence. There are no external meanings there. Anything
No, there's no.
is irrelevant, is a straw man of anything in my position. I don't care. You've granted everything in my position, everything in my argument. You've said, yep, you're right. And then you're saying, oh, here's this other stuff I don't give a shit about. That's not a part of my argument. Great job.
So here's a way to sort of marry this idea of libertarian free will and sort of the future being quote unquote sort
I
of
don't
fixed
care.
in a way, but
I don't care.
I'm not
because
sure
that's
whether
not my
I've used
position.
that word.
I don't care.
So let's just take. Well, the other people in the room might care, so let me just sort of like explicate what I'm saying. So if you imagine sort of the B theory of time, which, you know, a lot of people do accept, then the past and the future are going to be sort of like they're going to be just as real as the present, right? And so if you view time as this sort of block with all events in it, then an agent will sort of like, I don't know, have toast in the morning, right? And that's going to be, so if I have toast in the morning at 9 a.m., that's going to be as real as the time at 8 o'clock when I hadn't had it and the time at 10 o'clock when I had it, right? But if libertarian free will is true, then there can't be any antecedent conditions that determine me having toast in the morning. And so if that's true, then there's no antecedent conditions that determine me to have toast in the morning, right? So that's a way of sort of thinking about the future having sort of the same priority as the present. I'm not sure priority is the right word, but sort of the future and the past having just the same realness as the present. But you can still have libertarian free will. And if that's true, then God can know all of those time slices, right? But libertarian free will is still true because there's no antecedent conditions that determine you to do one thing or the other. And so that's one way of sort of marrying these two ideas of libertarian free will and God knowing what you'll do in the future.
Great job. You've made up a new definition of libertarian free will that doesn't correspond to the vast majority of Christians, and no one cares about except academic philosophers and wouldn't describe Christianity. Great job. Don't care.
I mean, many sort of philosophers. I mean, wait, where's your definition of libertarian free will?
Ability to do otherwise.
I understood
that like 20 times.
No, I'm asking where in sort of like the scientific literature is it defined that way?
I have to Google it. Don't care. What I've heard from all of the theists. So
okay,
that's the definition I use.
Can you send me the link?
Oh, do it yourself.
Can you send me the link where it's
nope.
Do it myself.
Do it yourself.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
I just Googled it.
Field
Surveys archive.org, free will and the ability to do otherwise. There you go. Very easy. This is the definition that I've been given by all the theist philosophers I've talked to. So if you want to find it, do it yourself.
Yeah, but the point is that I mean, compatibilists might say, yeah, they have the ability to sort of do otherwise in some sense, right? If they have the desire
not libertarian
to
free
do
will,
otherwise.
so that's a totally different topic, which is irrelevant.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, true, sorry. Oh, you're talking about libertarian. Yeah, no, sorry, that was my mistake. Yeah, I mean, I just think that this argument that you have is very limited in scope because someone can believe that sort of you have free will, but God knows what you're going to do. And
yes,
your
people
ability
can make
to
up
do
stupid beliefs to try and
find as a different modality than what you're talking about.
Yeah, so people can make up
I mean,
stupid beliefs to
there's a
make their
difference
worldview
between
fit anything. That
epistemic-
doesn't make a difference. What matters is what's the most plausible explanation and plausible understanding of the terms. Based on the most plausible understanding, the contradiction holds and it's stupid. and then you have to make up some kind of complicated modality bullshit to try and make your worldview fit. That's just you ad hoc, post hoc trying to make your worldview fit. The inconsistencies, don't care. Is that possible to do that?
Even if
Sure,
it's ad
always.
hoc.
Sure, it's always possible to do that.
But even if it's, I mean, I'm not granting that it's ad hoc or post hoc, but even if it is, that doesn't mean it's false.
True, but I don't care. I care about what's the most plausible understanding of the terms. And given the most plausible understanding of the terms, the contradiction I expressed holds. And if you have to make up some kind of post hoc, made up understanding of complicated modality bullshit to try and make it plausible, that just means your idea is bullshit. The simple one is the right one.
But
I like the simple one.
What's the argument for that?
That's usually the case in physics. Like when you're trying to post hoc reasoning, the more you
Physics.
add more complicated stuff to make your theory work, that's usually wrong. It's just de facto the case.
It's also Occam's razor.
I mean, Occam's razor, the way I understand it, is don't sort of multiply entities beyond reason or something like that. And I'm, like I said, I'm not like some philosophical genius, so I don't really know. But, yeah, you also said something weird the last time I talked. You said that time causes things. I don't really understand that.
Well, if time is a physical thing and it physically does stuff and physically interacts, then it physically causes things. Like what is hard about that?
That's not the way I conceptualize time. I don't like.
It's the
really
way Einstein and everyone in physics does.
I'm not sure that's true. Like,
literally.
Why? But can you send me where most physicists say that?
Space-time literally bends. I don't know what like.
No. I've read. So yeah. So I'm reading about the philosophy of time. I understand that I understand the sort of the Einsteinian sort of understanding, not very well, but I understand like basic gist, the relativity of space-time. I sort of understand that kind of. But yeah, I mean, that seems to be perfectly consistent with the idea that time doesn't cause things. So I don't really understand
if
what
space
you mean
and
when
time
you say
literally
time causes
bend,
things.
and we can literally measure it.
Okay.
That means it must cause things because it's the medium by which. What doesn't like a wave? If there is a wave, like in water, and the wave hits stuff, did the wave knock the ship over? Yes, it did. The wave caused the ship to knock over. So if space and time can bend and create waves, which can be measured by like the LIGO collider, then those waves that we measured and the perturbations in the sensor were caused by time bending.
Yeah, maybe I'd need to think about that, but I still really can't make sense of it much at all. Yeah.
Does everybody else understand? Did the wave knock the ship over? Does that make sense to everybody? Like, Amy, do you get that? Did the wave knock the ship over?
It makes sense to me.
And so if there's a wave in space-time caused by the bending of time and that hits something and that knocks it over, was that caused by time bending? Does that make sense to you, Amy?
I mean, if you say that,
yes, it does.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I mean, if you're saying that sort of time causes something, then obviously time causes something. Like time bends, and the bend causes. Like, yeah, I mean, I understand. I'm just having a hard time conceptualizing it. But maybe that's my mistake. But the example I gave was that if you have a random number generator and you go into the future and you find out the random number generator spits out 2, and then you go back in time, it's not a random number generator anymore. And I don't understand that.
Yeah, so that would be exactly like the wave thing. So if time is like B theory or whatever, and there's each slice of time actually exists and they're a thing like a wave, and then you go back to a different wave, whatever, and it's always the random number always generates 5. It's going to be caused by time. Time is going to cause that. Time is the causal agent besides those things.
Yeah, I'd suggest you look up the difference between random numbers and stochastic numbers. Stochastic would be something I think you might be able to argue that you'd be able to go back in time and then you'd get a different result.
Yeah, so I mean, I still think that it's a random number generator and that it could spit out anything, right? There's no determining factor that makes it spit out 2. It just happens to spit out 2.
I don't care about the determining factor nonsense. Again, my definition is if it goes back in time, has to be different. That's my definition of the ability to do otherwise. Go back in time, have it do it again, and be a different result. If it doesn't, not a different result.
Well, it might be the same result every single. It might be the same result every single time, but that's a very idiosyncratic understanding of like random.
Right,
free
it's because
will,
I'm trying to tie in the definition of free will, which is the ability to do otherwise. So yes, it would not. It does not. The analogy does not merge well with random numbers, but that's the answer.
Yeah, I mean, but like you're using these modal notions, and you haven't really
does not
explained
matter.
what
I literally
modality is.
explained it. Amy, did you understand my argument against free will? Did it make sense to you?
I understand your argument.
Rudolph, did you understand the argument? Did it make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay, so I fully explained it.
It makes sense to me.
Fully explained it. Audience understand it. Philosophers understand it. Fully explained.
Yeah, I mean, I look, I understand the intuitive appeal of your argument, but I just don't think it's really going to work against most well-educated theists. I just think that like it's not that the necessity comes from the relationship between the two.
I'm not arguing for a necessity here. So this isn't about a necessity that is the only logically possible way to do things. That's not the argument. The argument is this is the most coherent way to understand the meanings of these terms.
If someone has the understanding of free will that it is necessary, right? If you do that, free will is that it's not necessary that you do X. You could do not X. Then
just a quick interruption. Will it get the uneducated theists?
I mean, I guess maybe it can stump some uneducated theists, possibly. I mean, bad arguments can stump.
Well, no. So again, you're not understanding. Like, this is not about good or bad arguments. This is about what is the most plausible understanding of these terms related to the religious beliefs. Is it the super academic modal logic bullshit? Is that the most plausible understanding of what the religious text means? No. The most plausible understanding of what the religious text means is the way I expressed it, which leads to this contradiction. Can you make up a bunch of bullshit philosophical new modalities to try and make a coherent worldview? Maybe. Sure, absolutely. Is that the most plausible understanding of the terms given the text? No, it's not. I don't care if you can try to make up an entirely new ontology to make it fit. Don't care. What I care about is what is the most plausible understanding of these terms given the usage of the text, which is not what the philosophers mean.
So now earlier you'd said that, hang on, sorry. Earlier you'd said that you need to think about what had been said here, and we do have other members of our audience who'd like to join us. I'm wondering if you just want to maybe give up a wrapping up statement and we can try to bring other people up.
Oh yeah, sorry. I probably spoke too long. Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Guys, it's just we got to manage the time. That's all. But yeah, we've been talking for quite a while now.
Yeah. Okay. No, I mean, I think I'm fine. I think I've said all I need to, so I'll pass it off to someone else.
Well, thank you. Look forward to talking with you again. Welcome, mathematician. How are you today? Thank you for joining us. It looks like you're muted right now. Mathematician, can you...
Okay. Server muted. I had to unserver mute him.
Oh, okay. That's why I didn't see it. You beat me to it. Thank you. Mathematician, try clicking your microphone button. There we go.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Hold on. I need to figure out where I am on this Discord app now.
Yeah, it sounds like you're talking a little close to your mic. So otherwise your voice is coming through.
My mic. Hold on. Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a bit of improvement. Yes. So
Okay.
how are you? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I just want to say you guys do a great job, like moderating and just engaging with your audience. I just want to say with that last conversation, I know a bit. I know a bit of mathematics. Like I've dug a little bit into like the probabilistic method before, but I've never really understood modal logic. Like that's never been a part of my studies. So like I'm just wondering, is it even worth it? And like, cause like this guy kept saying, I heard you say, T-Jump, like you asked him, if you go back in time, is it possible that you could have chosen a different option? And he literally answered, no, because I think of his like religious, maybe dogma or something. I don't know, but like he claims to say that he believes in libertarian free will at the same time, which is kind of strange. But anyways, like is modal logic, because he kept appealing to, well, what about this modality? Is modal logic worth my time?
Not exactly. So modal logic is going beyond like true and false and going to what's possible. So it's like saying it's possible. There's a possible world where there is flying pink elephants. That's modality. It's a possible world semantics. Modal logic, possible worlds. Possible just means no logical contradiction, ways to imagine things, always things could logically be. It's completely a waste of time unless you're doing deep philosophy. But I don't think he's a theist at all. I think he's purely interested in deep philosophical rhetoric. He's not actually a theist and doesn't actually believe in libertarian free will. He's just interested in bringing up deep philosophical critiques of my debates with theists. So I don't think he's actually, I don't think he believes in libertarian free will. I don't think he's a theist.
Mistake, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's a deist, which is, you know, the lightest version. We're on the rope.
Okay, so I guess my next question is then, what do you think about people who claim to be agnostic atheists versus people who claim to be agnostic theists?
I don't have an opinion. Like, you can call yourself whatever you want. I think it's just dependent on what you think those words mean and what they mean to you in philosophy.
I think that characterizing that as a claim is putting a high expectation on people, like that I think most of the time isn't necessary. Like when somebody tells me that they're a Christian, normally I'll just believe them because most people are telling the truth about who they are. You know, now if they're dressed up in some traditional Muslim clothing, of course I'm going to have doubts about what they say for obvious reasons, and in which case I'd be warranted in asking, are you just kidding? But in most cases, people tell me they're part of a particular religion, I'll believe them. And just like when somebody tells me they're agnostic, I believe them. They don't know whether deities are real, or they say they're an atheist. They don't believe a deity is real, and I'm in both of those camps. So I think it's good if we generally take people at their word for things that are very simple, very obvious, and very common. Like if somebody tells me that at their home they have a cat or they have a dog or they have a window that they think they've left open, I tend to believe them because these are very normal, common things that people do or people have. And so where to say that something is a claim and apply a burden of proof is where something is a little bit more unusual, like somebody telling me, for example, that they drove their car down the street at 180 kilometers per hour and the police didn't see them and yet they passed them and all this kind of stuff. I'm thinking, okay, yeah, that's a claim that you're going to have to back up now because there's some more circumstances there. So I think you got to I would recommend, consider, is it really worth it to pursue and say, you're making a claim, you have to prove it. Part of human interactions is that we're selective about what we're going to believe and what we're going to question. And if we question absolutely everything, it's going to be very, very difficult to have a normal conversation. I hope this is helpful.
Yeah, I guess so. So I guess my follow-up question then is like, for me, I'm trying to understand the differentiation between agnostic theism and agnostic atheism, because like the underlying I guess the underlying similarity is that they're both agnostic. They're both willing to say like, I don't know, in that sense. When it comes to
okay. All right. So what happens? There's some people who add a lot of confusion into this, and it's really unnecessary. It's very simple. If you're agnostic, you're basically saying, I don't know whether a deity exists, or some agnostics are even saying it's not possible to know whether a deity is real. I'm using exists and real interchangeably here, by the way. But as an atheist, I don't believe. I'm also agnostic because I don't know whether a deity actually exists. Now, there are certain deities who there's contradictions in their definitions. I can just discard those as obviously they're nonsense. But in a general sense, I could say I don't know, because I don't have enough information to be able to go to every part of every corner of our every section of our cosmos and rule out that there's no deity. I don't even have the tools for that, as far as I know. So that's why I'm agnostic. Now, I have a friend who is a Christian, and he tells me he believes in God, but he doesn't know for certain that his God exists. So he is definitely a theist because he believes, and he's also agnostic because he doesn't know. There's no contradiction on this.
I think so. His question was, what's the difference between an agnostic theist and an agnostic atheist? So neither the atheist doesn't know, the theist doesn't know. They can still have different like percentages of certainty. So like you can be 60% sure there is no God, but not know. And the theist can be 60% sure there is a God and not know. And you could be agnostic atheist with 60% and an agnostic theist with 60% towards God. And so simply saying you're agnostic doesn't tell you what your percentage level is of how confident you are.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but what's weird is like, oh,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, if somebody wants to be more nuanced, definitely they can put a percentage on it. That's fine. Generally, if somebody just says they're agnostic, usually you can just assume they don't know.
And it's a separation out from just belief and knowledge. We are agnostic about something. We have a belief, but we don't have 100%. And so it's really just if someone were to hold a gun to your head and you were to say, hey, do you believe or not believe in a God? That would be your answer. I'm an agnostic atheist. I don't believe in a God.
See, I hate to play these like semantical games, but like I keep getting questioned on it, and I keep trying to figure out if I have the right understanding of this. So I've always identified as, for at least for the last couple of years, an agnostic atheist. But the fact that there exists an agnostic theist, I've met a couple agnostic theists on Discord, and the fact that they exist as an ideology makes me wonder, like, hey, am I biased by saying I'm an agnostic atheist, when in reality I was told that atheism simply is the lack of belief? Like, I actually don't want to make an assessment of 60% either way, because I feel like that would be intellectually dishonest. For me, just for me. But I'm trying to find the right category that I fit in, and people keep pointing me the wrong way. So
what is
I'm
your
just wondering
percentage?
You've got the right category. You're running into people who are trying to change and control and change the narrative, and I just reject them because I run into these people as well. Fortunately, they're in the minority, and you can just safely ignore. I think you've categorized yourself correctly. It's where I fit on the spectrums as well, if you want to look at it as spectrums.
What is your position?
No, continue.
Could you tell us what is your position? Like, what percentage would you put one way or the other?
Well, so technically, I guess I would say it's impossible to know the answer to that question.
Like, would you say it's 50-50?
He just said he doesn't.
In the sense that I have equal weight as like because I have zero information about like which one is correct. So yeah, I would say 50-50 would make the most sense. But like I'm not making the assessment that the actual probability or the actual like chance is 50% because I'm just saying that out of ignorance.
So then, yeah, I don't see why you would call yourself an agnostic atheist. You could just call yourself an agnostic and leave out the atheist term because
that's what I've always wondered. But then people tell me, well, you're also an atheist because I do lack the belief in a God.
Sure, that's fine. That's just a different definition of atheism. But if you don't have a position,
yeah, which one is the right one? I'm trying to figure that out, I guess.
There isn't a right one. It's however you identify the usage of the word. So there are many atheists who have a lack theist definition and some who have a positive disbelief position. It's whichever one you think the word most accurately means.
So I think Rando. I can't see the rest. I can't see the rest of your name, Rando. All I see is Rando.
Randolph Richardson. So
Randolph,
so atheism broadly and commonly is just not believing in deities, or some people say lack of belief or absence of belief. It's all the same thing. Now there are many atheists who do hold a position that there are no deities, and they're I guess you could say they're more committed to this idea, and that's fine. There are different ways that people use the terms. Now, somebody's not being specific about how they're using the term, then assuming the baseline is that they don't believe is correct. It's true of people who hold the position there are no deities as a matter of consequence, and it's true of the people who don't hold that position that just simply don't believe. So there are people out there who are trying to dissociate and say that, oh, if you only don't believe, you're not an atheist. That just doesn't make sense. So
it feels like someone's trying to muddy the waters, and I guess I'm trying to figure out why that is. Because it feels like now I'm being intellectually dishonest by calling myself an agnostic atheist, when in reality I don't think I am.
No. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get you to take on a burden of proof, even though you're not doing that. And I think you're right to stand where you are and just say, look, I'm not decided. And when somebody says you have to put a percentage on it, or when they're saying you have to take a position, no, we don't. If we look at, I think it was Aristotle who says it's the mark of an enlightened mind to be able to consider an idea without accepting it. I agree with that concept, because there's many times we go through life and there's all kinds of things that we observe, but we don't pass a judgment on it. So this is just something naturally that we do. And why should it be any different for deities? Right.
And you get flack from two different camps for being an agnostic atheist, and that is, I would say, the agnostic purists, the people that say, listen, there is a third position to what I think is a dichotomy, and you can't be, an agnostic theist or an agnostic atheist. The other comes from Gnostic theists. I find that is actually a more common position, and these are the people that will go, I know Jesus is God 100%. I know him 110%. You're like, okay, calm down. And so these are the type of people that will say your doubt is not a valid position, and you have to give us a percent or give us something right now. But honestly, doubt is the right thing. When you don't know something, the correct answer is I don't know.
I think that's the most intellectually honest position, and that's the one that I hold. I just feel like every time I take a position, people try to play these semantical games with me, but they're all like the people who they're. Keep in mind, like, of course, the Gnostic theists, I guess, are going to play these stupid games. I've seen those games before. But, like, what's annoying is it feels like there's some sort of internal contradiction that's being, like, perpetuated for some reason to, like, muddy the waters and make it seem as though an agnostic atheist is not necessarily neutral.
I would agree. I would probably agree with that. I'd say if you're an agnostic atheist, you're probably not neutral. You're probably leaning somewhat, like 51%, 52%, 60% towards the atheist position rather than the theist position. If you're exactly 50-50, you probably wouldn't label yourself an agnostic atheist. You'd probably say you're just agnostic.
But like the intellectually honest position, I think, right, is that, you know, there's no like tool that we can use to measure these like percentages accurately, right?
Sure there is.
What tool is that?
Well, you can use induction. So like, what is the fundamental nature of reality as far as we can tell? Consciousness doesn't go lower than like advanced biology. And so to the idea that there is a consciousness at the fundamental nature of reality is very implausible. And so you'd say it's more likely there is no God. And so you can get 99% of the way. Yeah, there's probably no God. That's where I am, I'm in the 90s.
I think you misunderstood the question. Or maybe I didn't communicate well. So like, when I'm trying to evaluate the percentage of whether or not God exists, I first ask the question, what do we mean by God? And then my second question is like, is that the correct definition, or is that the definition that like everyone agrees on that we are using to answer this question about what the probability is? Like, I feel like we gotta start from the ground that like, what is God? Is he, because if he's omnipotent, right, then can he make a rock that not even he can move or whatever, right?
You can
Like,
have
it's just like
different,
this.
you can have different positions, and some Christians do, for instance, and that are respective to particular definitions. So you could be like a global atheist or a global agnostic or whatever, or you could have a particular kind of atheism about a particular god. So, for example, you don't believe Zeus exists, probably. You probably say you're like a Zeus atheist, even though you have just as little epistemic access to Zeus existing than you do to some undefined god type. However, you're probably going to be more agnostic about some undefined god type than you would about the specific Zeus, because it seems like the Zeus hypothesis, there's going to be more evidence against it than just some possible god. So it's okay to like to sort of nuance your position. The word atheist was originally applied to the Christians by the Romans to say that they didn't believe in the Roman gods. That's what the word was used for. It's not that it always means either theist or non-theist. It's just a lack of belief with respect to a particular definition of God. So you can be a theist or non-theist or agnostic with respect to any particular version of God.
Okay, that makes sense. So now I have a follow-up question then, because like I would say I'm atheist to the Christian God, well, like wholeheartedly, right?
Yeah.
But that's because like I'm very skeptical of the many contradictions within that specific religion.
Yeah, that's a common belief. Like a lot of people
but like
are.
I might be agnostic maybe towards pantheism, because like I really wouldn't understand, you know, the inconsistencies with saying that the universe is God, other than like
it's not theism.
The explanatory power of it.
Pantheism isn't like, it doesn't really meet the definitions of theism because there's no like person. It's just calling the universe God. So I think the minimal
that's like version, that's kind of how I see it too, I guess. Let me think of maybe I can think of a better example.
Deism is like the minimal theism, I think, because it's still some like person being claimed exists, and that, you know, analogical person, whatever, however they minimally want to define it, is something that you could be less skeptical about than a specific God. I agree.
So like, are you saying that if you believe like a rock is a god, like then you're not a theist?
No.
Not by the typical definition of theist. You would not be a theist. Like Christians wouldn't call you a theist. Muslims wouldn't.
I think rocks are irrelevant. Yeah, rocks are irrelevant to the question of God. The point is, you when you say I am an atheist or a theist or agnostic with respect to a particular kind of God, you're just making a statement about that particular kind, and it's fine to give different answers to different definitions of God.
Yeah, that's very useful and productive, I think, because then I feel like I can make a very clear distinction of where I am on the spectrum when it comes to each specific God.
Yeah, and you're in good company. A lot of people say exactly that. They say they're hard atheists with respect to the contradictory omni properties of particular omni gods, but they are just agnostic about some possible like minimal deist God or something like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Abrahamic gods do not exist. I think there's good evidence in that direction. But, maybe the god on another planet out there in another galaxy has the right one. We don't even know about it.
Yeah, that would suck, wouldn't it?
It very much would.
Why? Maybe it's a good god on another planet. Who knows?
Well, that's the bet, right? You'd have to hope it's a good god and not like we put you on Earth just to fuck with you.
In my position is there are no gods.
I think that would be the first time where Occam's razor would be like a complete failure to me.
Well, Occam's razor has actually failed many times. Like, what causes electricity or lightning? Well, it's actually billions and billions of particles bumping into one another, creating friction and generating energy between the billions of particles. It's not the simplest solution. So Occam's razor isn't always right.
Oh, I understand what you mean by that, but like this one's the one. This is like one of those things that like I really rely on the Occam's razor, like one of my favorite applications, I guess. And it would suck if it failed here.
And Occam's razor is just having the least amount of assumptions. So I would say, I think, therefore I am, that logic seems to work. And then theists add on another presupposition, which would be a god. They would need evidence to justify that presupposition. And when it comes to a very unscientific way of thinking, I think, first of all, X and T-Jump gave very good examples and ways to figure that out. But just to use the very extreme, very layperson's version, if someone's holding a weapon to your head and they say, does a God exist or not? It's just those two questions. And I would say a God does not exist. And therefore, I am an atheist. But do I know for 100%? I don't. I can't have 100% knowledge of that.
Okay, so I think what you're saying is that like you view it as like a very continuous or a linear, I should say, spectrum, which I think is the way I kind of see it too. Well, that was my only question. I'll let other people speak. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for bringing that up. Appreciate the time to chat with you. Our next guest is Flying Space Cambodia. Welcome. Thank you for joining.
Oh, thanks. I won't be too long. So I'm going to a neo-pagan meeting type thing soon. So I'm unsure personally of much. I've not looked into it enough. I'm currently studying philosophy. So what questions would you say I should ask them?
Well, the first question is your goal when you go there to learn more about it, to challenge them? What is your stance?
Well, just anyway, I went to a chaplaincy meeting recently, and I was just asking questions. I didn't feel like I got very far. There was a Zen Buddhist guy there, and so I asked him like, oh, how did you get into Zen Buddhism? Was it a personal feeling based sort of belief? Was it that you felt it had a positive sort of utility benefit to you, or did you like somehow logically deduce it? And he was like, oh, I can't explain it to you. We're not on the same framework, and I can't explain it in this context. And then proceeded to not explain it to me anymore.
So the first thing.
Sorry.
Sure. So you're just open-minded. You're just trying to learn.
Yeah.
The first thing I would say is, so I grew up in like an esoteric sort of neo-pagan influenced family. It wasn't just strictly neo-pagan. There was a variety of esoteric stuff.
Uh-huh.
But I also was basically an atheopagan. I had some vague beliefs about like meaning or teleology in the universe, but I didn't really ascribe any specific supernatural beliefs. And what you'll find is that a lot of people who are in pagan circles have, just like in other kinds of theism, have a spectrum of belief that they're not all orthodox by one standard.
This is what I was going to say. I'm not going to try and predict something before I've been there, but I think it's probably going to be a lot of people saying I have a feeling of God, but I thought that the Abrahamic faiths or the mainstream Abrahamic faiths were too socially repressive. I think that's probably going to be a common thing I'll find.
Yeah, so the number one reason that people cite, according to a Christian survey about why people left Christianity, there's about 30% of all people left Christianity because of like repressive social issues. So you're absolutely right that that's the most common reason cited for abandoning Christianity.
Uh-huh.
And so you'll probably hear that a lot. But the point is, amongst pagans, you'll find that a certain percentage of them don't really have any like principled view about the supernatural. They're just atheopagans. Essentially, they really like pagan rituals. They really like pagan culture. They find, as you mentioned, utility, cultural benefit. Like they think that it's like a healthy tradition, even if it's purely metaphorical. And they may be agnostic. They may think it's likely true or like think it's unlikely to be true. I was one of those people who didn't think it was literally true physically, but I believed that it was a very good cultural tradition and it had a lot of psychological benefit. So to me, like atheopaganism was like a kind of a therapeutic community in the same way that any like really like nice community tradition can be good. It doesn't depend on the supernatural being literally true. I'm not saying that's the majority. I'm just saying I would look into that view because if you look at the kind of different views that pagans take, and there's a spectrum, and some of them are anywhere along that view, it'll give you a way of looking at what they're doing and understanding why a lot of people do like paganism without actually believing in the supernatural in a literal sense.
Because I would like to understand sort of the other viewpoint as well, because I know, for example, there's Platonists and people like that. I'm currently reading Plato, and I know that the people developed it into a theological standpoint that was separate from the Abrahamic religions, right?
You mean Neoplatonism?
Yeah, and there was sort of writers and that. I think there's some Egyptian ones as well. So I don't know if people there are going to have the same viewpoint. So if I'm questioning it not from necessarily a utility-based standpoint, but from a sort of theological-based standpoint, what do you think would be some good questions to ask?
I would probably ask people like what books they've read and what their kind of thought process is about it, and because it's kind of leaving it open-ended, right? So like in my family, it was like the background of having been Masons, and then they did their own research and decided to start their own thing that was independent of Masonry because there was like fairly sexist, like restrictive aspects to Masonry. It was mostly a men's club and so on. So they're going to have a story like that. And then, if you talk to them about what they've read, they'll tell you their opinions on it. But I would keep an open mind as to like the sort of strains of atheopaganism. Because I think if you scratch a lot of pagans hard enough on their beliefs, a lot of them will fall back on just some kind of atheopaganism, but they really like acting as though gods exist because it's like a really psychologically enjoyable tradition to them, basically.
I'm just wondering, have you heard of any arguments? Because I know, for example, a lot of the Christian arguments won't use, and I'll use the monotheistic sort of Abrahamic religions, won't use that sort of definition. They'll have proper arguments, if you want to call it that. They'll have.
There are arguments. I would, if you want to see like a YouTuber who makes the arguments for paganism in a reconstructionist sense, check out Ocean the Wizard. He's a YouTuber and a frequent community member in these circles, and I think he has amazing scholarship in his videos as far as researching and explaining multiple positions. He doesn't just take his stance and say, this is the correct one, everyone else is like a false pagan or something. He gives a pretty good view of the spectrum of belief. He falls on the reconstructionist side, which is he personally practices trying to reconstruct one specific version of Norse heathenry. But he talks about other perspectives on paganism. And, sometimes we argue lightly about atheopaganism and whether it's, quote unquote, real paganism, because I think some pagans are offended by atheopaganism when it's actually explained to them. They think it's like pretending or making fun of actual pagans or something, but I don't think that's the case. I think historically, like a good number of people in ancient times didn't really hold superstitious religious views as far as the supernatural, but they did just like believe that honoring the gods and the culture of the pagan gods was like a good thing for like social cultural reasons. It's certainly Plato was like that. Like Plato's views on the gods are basically
there's a lot
it's a noble lie.
I've read a bit about Socrates, and there's a part where they go past this river or whatever, and he's like, "Oh well, I don't actually think the god created this river. I think it's a story." And he like that. He describes that. I know
'cause, like,
Plato was religious. He had he wants to ban parts of the Iliad because he thinks the content of God isn't portrayed properly in them. But I think
he had like a Pythagorean view of like God as like a perfection, like a mathematical lawgiver, and his views are explained in the Timaeus, where he gives like his version of the creation story, which influenced probably the Torah and other religious traditions, because the Torah most closely matches Plato's Timaeus more than any other creation myth, even though it has elements of Near Eastern religion in it. So yeah,
I know there was a lot of connection to the Near East. Mithras is the big one.
I don't think there's a single big one. Like there's a lot of Mithraism. There's a lot of
I mean Mithras was big in a lot of the Zoroastrian areas and came across and spread across through the empire.
Sure.
T-Jump, have you got anything to add? Has anybody else got anything to add that you might think is necessary?
I would need to know like your purpose. What was the purpose of the question?
I just want to try and find out like I mean, obviously I can ask about if anybody has like a utility benefit, but I also want to ask if anybody has any sort of arguments for neo-paganism. Not from this chat. I mean, when I go there, what would you ask if you were there?
Very specifically, you need to ask them why goth chicks are so hot, and also guys.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't ask them any questions about arguments, because that's usually not their thing, unless it's specifically a community where they're wanting to debate. The pagans don't usually debate. Using premise 1, I have some experience. I think premise 2, in order to think you must exist, conclusion you exist. And if you use that inference to get to the knowledge you exist, then it presupposes like standard logic, because you need the first 2 premises to get to the conclusion. So if you gain knowledge via using the premises to get to the conclusion, then you're presupposing logic. But if you're not using the inferences of the like premise 1, premise 2, then you don't need any of that garbage. So you can use the argument, I think therefore I am, in order to describe the fact that you're having an experience and gain knowledge via this fact you're having an experience, without actually using the premise 1, premise 2 to get to the conclusion.
So it's an argument without an inference?
No. It's an argument that represents the fact that you have experience. The argument is just a sentence to describe the fact you have an experience.
Yeah, so, and I was right before when I said that it's just a description of some experience going on.
I use it to describe the fact that you have an experience.
Right. So then it's just like, I mean, maybe I'll just ask, how is it supposed to be something more than just an assertion that there is some experience going on?
What? So it's not an assertion, it's a description. So you're not asserting anything. It's like, I experience.
Yeah, but
great. So you can know you exist.
Yeah, the sort of point with the Cognito, as far as I understand, is that you're trying to like demonstrate some foundation for knowledge, right?
To yourself, yeah.
That's fine. But like, you're demonstrating it to yourself. But if all you're doing is just saying there is experience, that's not like a demonstration of anything.
That's a foundation for you to build off knowledge, yeah.
I'm saying it's not a foundation because it's just an assertion.
No, again, so you're not, when you're talking to yourself, you're not asserting you have experience. You're literally experiencing. There's no assertion there. You're just describing the fact that you're literally having an experience. Assertions are what you give to somebody else.
No.
Yes.
Look, so the point that Descartes is trying to make, or I guess the point that you're trying to make, because people bring up Descartes, you say, well, I don't really care what Descartes said. I'm saying what I'm saying, which is fine. Okay. But it seems to me that the point you're trying to make is similar to what the point that Descartes was trying to make. That he could prove to himself that there was something that he couldn't be wrong about, right?
Sure.
Right. And so if there's no actual proof there, it's just saying something like I have experience, then it's like doesn't have the value it's purported to have, right?
No. So if you have experience, you must exist. So you know you exist. So the experience is the first part.
So the experience is the first part.
Yeah. So like if you're trying to know something, you can know you exist. Now, if you're trying to build a foundation of knowledge, that's a good foundation to build off of.
Right, but you don't want to say there's an inference from that to I exist.
Well, that's a different conversation. So there's two different or multiple different usages of how I use the Cognito. The first one is like, can you know something without God? Yes, I can know I exist whether there's a God. So that's presup is debunked. How do I get from my existence to like the external world? That's another context where it's like there's some difference.
No, I'm not
between...
talking about the external world. I'm talking about your existence, right? You're saying
What?
You start with I have an experience,
Yep.
and then you're saying you infer to I exist from I have the experience?
Sure. So it's not possible for me to have an experience and not exist. Therefore, I exist.
All right. So that will require that there's an inference, right?
The sentence does, my existence does not.
Okay, I'm not asking about your existence. This is epistemic, right?
Okay.
So if that requires an inference, then the stuff about logic is you're gonna be open to that stuff.
Sure.
The accusation that you have to presuppose logic.
Sure, but the inferences are irrelevant to my existence. I already exist, and I can't be wrong about that. So
yeah, but we're talking about epistemology. We're not talking about ontology.
Well, I have no idea what your objection is because there's lots of context this is used, and you haven't clarified anything about what you're saying, and you've brought up no criticisms of anything I've said. So you haven't clarified anything of what you said.
It just seems like I've been talking to you for like over 5 minutes, and now you're just shutting down and saying you didn't say anything.
You haven't said anything. What's your objection? You've said nothing. You've just been asking questions.
Yeah, I mean,
like with no...
I'll repeat myself. Maybe you'll sort of understand it this time, right? So the idea here is you just said that you're making an inference, right? I have an experience. From that, I can infer that I exist, right?
Sure.
Given some logical principles.
Sure.
Right? Before you said you're trying to duck the accusation that you're relying on some logical principles. But if you say that you're doing an inference,
Yes, my experience does not presuppose any logical principles. My experience is a thing that exists, so it doesn't presuppose anything.
Ontological, we're talking about epistemology.
Right. So that was your original question, dumbass. That's in that context of that conversation.
Dumbass, I wasn't talking about a
Goodbye.
ontology
Goodbye.
ever.
You're done. So in the context of the conversation of the Cognito related to not starting with any inferences, it's just the fact that I exist, my experience does not take any inferences. It is a thing. It exists. From that thing that exists, I can then build and use inferences to gain knowledge and logic and stuff. But the thing I start with is the experience, which has zero inferences, zero logic. So the point of starting with the Cognito is that, yes, I definitely use inferences after I start with the fact that I exist, with is my experience, but the experience itself takes zero inferences. Anyway, let's move on to the next guy. Not a troll.
If anyone has evidence for God, come on down.
Yeah, I don't characterize Piper as a troll because I know him know her on Clubhouse. Actually, a lot of people challenging Piper just the way I hear people challenging you, T-Jump. So I'm actually kind of surprised that you two clashed here. I was kind of thinking there would be a great conversation. So.
They were just bringing up a pointless semantic criticism that it was completely irrelevant based on how I use the Cognito. Like I use it in many different contexts, and so they'd have to clarify which one they're going for. And so the context that has no inferences is the one that my existence doesn't presuppose anything. There are no inferences for my existence. It's a thing that exists. Then from that, I can then use inferences to gain knowledge. But the existence itself isn't an inference.
Okay, yeah, this is an area that I am not versed on, that I have to learn more on, and it's a matter how much time do I have in a day. It is on my list, so yeah, thank you for clarifying that. For people who were finding that you're server muted, some people have sent me some private messages to let me know what's been going on, is that they've been getting server muted by Darth Dawkins. And apparently somehow he got some moderator. He somehow got moderator powers in this Discord group, and has been abusing them to not just mute people when he's having conversations, but he does a whole server mute on them. So Taco, maybe we can talk with the administrator. Maybe we can. Well, Taco. So Taco, maybe we can, talk with the administrators about this later. Just let them know that's going on. I see that we have somebody who we spoke with earlier who wants to come up. So let's bring this gentleman back up. Thank you again, T-Jump, for explaining that.
You're probably undoing server moods, and so I'd just be careful with that.
What?
Well, yeah, people coming up on the stage, and we had the thing is, the comments that I'm getting are people saying that these are all done by Darth Dawkins, so they're glad we're undoing those.
Yeah, pre-subs don't like people asking questions back. They like asking questions, but only one way.
Oh, hello. Can you guys hear me?
I've been trying to bring up why is it wrong to eat puppies? There we go. It's good to see you again. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, no, no one else had their hand up, so I thought I'd ask another quick question. It's about the model of morality that T-Jump has. Can you sort of explicate what you mean by a justified immoral action?
Something you do that's immoral, but it's the least immoral action you can do at the time. Kill one
And
to
what does it
save
mean
five.
to say to? What's it mean to say it's the least immoral, that it leads to like the least imposition of will or something?
That you can accomplish given your physical limitations.
Okay, so something is an immoral action when it's an imposition of will, but it's a justified immoral action when it leads to less imposition of will overall. Is that correct?
Sort of.
Where did I go wrong, or do I need to add something?
Well, so if you have only options that lead to imposition of will, so everything you can do is going to lead to imposition of will, but one option will lead to less imposition than other options, then it's justified. If you have the option to not do any, then it wouldn't be a justified immoral action.
Okay, so if I like see someone like raping somebody else, and the only way I can stop them is by shooting the rapist.
Yep.
Would
Yes.
shooting the rapist be a greater imposition of will than like rape? Like, let's say the person being raped like doesn't like it, but I'd need to know how badly they don't like it, because let's say the only way of stopping the rapist is by shooting them. That seems to be like a greater imposition of will. So in that case, it would be moral to like shoot the person.
Probably. So like if you're going to kill them, like there's usually other options than literally killing them.
No, but I built into the hypothetical that the only way of preventing it is by shooting them.
So yeah,
so
if you're literally
the
only way to stop someone from being raped is to literally murder another person, then yeah, it's debatable whether or not you should do that. Usually there's other options.
Right. What if like, I mean, it just seems weird, right? Because you would have to know how badly like someone doesn't like it when they're being raped.
No, in pragmatic situations like that, you can just leave it up to the general consensus on the rule. You don't need to know their exact psychology.
Like
it's irrelevant.
If the rapist is like super sensitive and they like really, really hate like being touched, right? And then they're raping somebody, then you would have to like...
No, we just evaluate everyone individually as equal, and so it wouldn't make a difference there. So you wouldn't have to know anything about their psychology.
But everyone isn't equal.
Don't care. In pragmatic worlds, it doesn't make a difference. So if we're talking about the best of all possible worlds where we can know everything,
I don't know what you mean by pragmatic worlds, but I'm just saying like if I push somebody, right? Like that's an imposition of will, possibly. But someone might consider that a greater imposition than other people, right? If I push
I don't
Arnold
care.
Schwarzenegger,
so we can just leave that up to the law. The law can take care of the pragmatic world. So we don't need to know their psychological states in our pragmatic world to make pragmatic decisions. So if you're making an analogy of what we should pragmatically do, like pushing people or saving people from rape or whatever, that would be assessed in our pragmatic world, which we just assess everyone equally, having equal rights, and use it that way. We don't need to know the psychology. The only reason we need to know literally their psychology would be as if we were in literally the best of all possible worlds and could do anything, and then we would start to assess psychologically.
I don't care about like this pragmatic stuff. I'm just saying like.
Well, you do. You just don't realize it. So if you're making comparisons,
what?
like if we push somebody, you're not in the best of all possible worlds because it's not even possible in the best of all possible worlds. You're in the pragmatic world.
I'm not talking about the best of all possible worlds.
Clearly.
I don't care about this possible world semantics.
Well, you are, because you keep asking about my morality. So in my morality, this would be assessed. Is this in the best of all possible worlds, or is this a pragmatic world? Clearly it's pragmatic, and so you would assess it with pragmatic limitations.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about a specific world that I'm talking about. I'm asking you what your moral view talks about. Whether it's pragmatically limited or not, like, who cares, right? It doesn't matter.
It's literally contingent to the answer to the question. It's literally the core of the answer to the question. You're just saying you don't care. Well, okay, then just don't ask the question.
No, I don't care whether you call it like, oh, this is a pragmatically limited world or not. Like
that's literally entailed in the answer. That is what is required to answer your question given my model. So if you don't care about that, then don't answer the question, because that's part of the answer.
Fine. I mean, I'm just asking if, like, it just seems weird to say that if you see someone raping somebody else and the only way to prevent it is like shooting them in the leg, let's say, and that's going to cause like more pain and more imposition on the rapist.
100% justified. You can absolutely shoot them in the leg. 100%. I wholly endorse shooting them in the leg to stop them.
But hold on a second, because I asked you at the start what it means for something to be a justified immoral action.
Yeah, that would be a justified immoral action.
It's justified. Wait, just one sec. You said that it would be a justified immoral action if you can only do sort of two things. The only options are to
well, in that case, you're doing a moral thing also. So helping the person who's being raped.
No, that's fine. Look, I get that. But the point is that if it's the case that shooting somebody in the leg is causing like a greater imposition than
again, we assess that
person
every individual is equal in that case, and protecting the morality of the other person is greater morality. So that would be a justified immoral action to shoot them, because you'd be doing a moral thing to help the person being raped.
Yeah, but what difference does it make whether they're like
culpability? The person doing the rape is culpable for the immoral action, and so you're literally protecting another person.
What does it matter about protect? Your moral system just says that immoral action is an imposition of will. It doesn't say anything about like protection or anything.
Stopping someone from being raped is a moral action. They want to not be raped.
No, I understand that, but if it's a greater imposition of will to shoot somebody in the leg, then it would actually be immoral to shoot that person in the leg.
What? So that part doesn't matter. You're doing a moral action by helping a person, and you're doing an immoral action by shooting them in the leg. But because you're protecting the will of a victim, that's more moral than the consequences to the perpetrator.
What does it matter whether they're the victim or not? Your moral system doesn't say anything about being a victim or not.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, if you want
violation of will, if someone is violating someone else's will without their consent, they're a perpetrator, and you're allowed to stop them by whatever means you can in order to prevent them from being able to restrain other people.
Look, but I asked you at the start what a justified immoral action is, and you said that a justified immoral action is one in which you sort of maximize
if you're given only options of doing immoral actions, and you do the least immoral action, but that you're doing a moral action. That's not, you're only limited to doing immoral action. You're doing a moral action by saving someone.
I know, but I get
this is not hard.
But I'm
why is this so hard for you? This is very, very easy. It is justified to stop the rapist by shooting them in the leg. Easy to understand.
No, but no, I don't think that would be true in all cases on your view, right? Because if shooting them in the leg is a greater imposition of will than that person raping the other person, right? then that would
It's
be an
not.
immoral
Rape
action
is
to do.
horribly immoral, and so shooting them in the leg will never be the case. It's never the case unless the person
No,
wants to be
I
raped.
agree. No, well, I don't
Problem
think it would
solved. There you go.
be. No, look, I agree that rape is horrible. I agree that it's immoral, but I'm just saying that on your view,
On
right,
my
I
view,
asked
it's
you at the
justified
start
to shoot
whether
the
this.
person in the leg. Problem solved.
Hold on a second. No, look, hold on a second. If shooting them in the leg,
Shooting them in the
let's
leg is
say,
not a greater imposition than saving the person from rape. Problem solved.
no, but what if it is?
It's not. Problem solved.
Wait, imposition of will, you just mean sort of like how much they don't like it, right?
No, whether you don't care what you like.
What?
So the
What?
amount
Will
you
is
like
a
it is, again,
subjective
everyone is
notion.
measured as equal. So you equally have rights over yourself as someone else.
What?
Whether you like it, I don't care.
Wait, so if I like punch somebody, that's equal? That's like the same imposition of will as if I punch like Arnold Schwarzenegger and I punch a baby. Like that's the same imposition of will?
Possibly.
What?
Like, unless they want
So
to be
if I
punched.
if I punch a bodybuilder in the calf, right, that's the same amount of imposition of will as if I punch a baby in the calf.
Again, you're confusing pragmatic limitations to objective morality. So if they want to be punched, it's moral. If they don't want to be punched, it's immoral.
No, I'm not
And if you
asking you
cause
about
permanent damage, that's other things they also don't want.
I'm just asking if I
This is not hard. This is not hard. It's justified to shoot the late rapist in the leg. Problem solved.
No, but I'm arguing that on some cases it's not going to be, on your view.
On my view, I just gave you the answer 100% of the time. It's justified to shoot the rapist in the leg to stop a rape. I just gave you the answer.
No, I agree. I mean, on my view,
No,
I think that it'll
on
be
my view,
justified
this is the
to shoot the
case.
rapist
If you
in the
disagree,
leg,
you're
but-
wrong. I gave you the answer. Full answer. Full stop. You're done.
Well, and why is it wrong? Can I ask you, why is it wrong to do that to someone from your moral perspective? Where do morals come from?
I think they're irreducible.
Irreducible? As in, do you mean arbitrary?
No, not arbitrary. I think they're irreducible. So I don't think they can be reduced to sort of like physical stuff, right? Because then there's an open question argument. I don't think like also sort of like even reducing them to sort of some like Platonic object is going to be open to the is-or gap. So I think they have to be irreducible.
Sure, but you're kind of telling us also what it's not, as in it can't be irreducible. Well, what is it?
I'm a principled particularist, so I think that there are no non caetibus paribus moral principles. Like I think that for any sort of like moral principle you can find obvious counterexamples. Like utilitarianism, you can come up with the example of the hospital analogy when there's 5 dying people and you can kill one person to save 5. You know, obviously I still think it's immoral to like kill one person to save 5.
Sure. Well, those are the type of moral conundrums that we try. It's like I normally hear it from like the train track, but
yeah, right.
But I guess that's fascinating, and that is a moral question that we kind of have to probe. But I'll give you how my answer is. I'll tell you where I think our morals come from. I think morals, I'm somewhere between. I'm a moral situationalist. I think that it comes from biology and consciousness. And I think those are the things, the players and the moral agents that we're talking about. And before I talk, I could talk forever and ever. But I guess I just want to hand it back over to you. Do you have any type of system? Do you have a way of saying, listen, this is moral, and hey, this is not moral?
Yeah, so I sort of, the way I look at it is I I have these considerations that I take in. Like, I might say, all things being equal, I want to reduce the amount of pain, right? And then, or I might say, all things being equal, I want to sort of, I don't know, prevent death or something like that. And when I'm given a moral situation, given that I'm a principled particularist, I look at the situation I'm faced with. I think about the goods and the evils in that particular instance, and I think, well, what principles do I care most about in this case, or what do I care most about in this case, and then I act on that. Yeah.
Okay, so reducing amount of pain and preventing death.
No. That's two examples, right? I'm sure you can find a counterexample where, a case is moral, or a case where I would say is moral, where it doesn't reduce death and doesn't reduce pain, but it's nonetheless moral. I'm a principle particularist, so there's not going to be like a list of finite principles that you can list for me that determines what's moral or not.
Okay, and can I just get something on the board, which I think is obvious, because I don't think you are an atheist, but I just want to get it out there. You do not think any of this comes from another agent?
I think it comes from an agent. I'm a moral subjectivist.
Oh,
I'm not.
say, let me rephrase this.
Do you believe in a God?
Yes, thank you.
No, I don't believe in a God.
Okay, I mean, these are good moral questions. The problem is that atheists are going to have this moral argument for probably a while.
I don't think so. I think there's a very easy answer. Ask, what is the most moral thing? Most moral thing to do? Well, create the best of all possible worlds where it's impossible to force anyone to do anything they don't consider doing. Problem solved. Here you go. Morality solved. That's it. Is there a more moral thing you can do? No.
I don't think the best of all possible worlds is a coherent notion.
How is that not coherent? It's perfectly coherent.
Well, on my view, it's more moral for someone, like a world in which somebody is like happy and enjoying their life, that's a more moral world than one in which it's exactly the same, but that person doesn't exist. And
what?
so
That makes no sense. That was incoherent.
Well, okay, so imagine a world in which the only thing that exists is one single agent and they're really happy, right? Now, imagine another world in which nothing exists. I think that the first world is more moral than the second one.
So do I.
Yeah, okay, so, and I think that
but you can forget all the possibilities. Just say right now, what is the most moral thing that could happen? All conscious agents that exist would be given their own universe where they couldn't be forced to do anything they don't consent to doing. Problem solved.
No, I don't think that's
okay. What's a better moral solution than that?
Well, I take into considerations like a person's sort of desires as well. So like I think that it's more moral if someone can impose on somebody else's will, but they choose not to. Like if I can decide to kill somebody and I choose not to, I think that's sort of more moral than if I can't do it at all.
So would a world where some people can and do be more moral than a world where no one can, even if they want to?
I don't know, possibly.
I would say no. I'd say a world where no one can, whether or not they want to, without restricting people's consciousness, is a better world than one where we have to restrict everyone's consciousness or get rid of their desires so they don't want to hurt anybody.
Why?
Because literally manipulating their minds would be immoral.
No, I'm saying that why do you think that a world in which imposition of will, you can't impose on somebody's will, is better than some world in which you can, but they choose not to?
because there are people who want to impose on other people's wills. So in order to achieve that world, you'd have to kill them or erase their brains or something, which would be immoral. So the most moral thing wouldn't be to erase their brains or delete them. It'd be to allow them to continue to be who they are, but limit it such that they can't harm other people. That would be less immoral than deleting them or killing them.
Right, but okay, so wait, Amy, I just want to sort of explain why I think the best of all possible worlds is incoherent for you. So I think that a world in which there's two agents who are happy, right, is better than a world in which there's only one agent who is happy. You sort of understand that notion?
Well, I'll tell you why I'm going to have a hard time, why I don't normally argue with him on this. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think there are things that are objective, and then I think because the notion is about agents, there are going to be things that are subjective. And I think it's hard when you're saying the difference between one agent and two agents, because I think morality can
Whether
only...
it's subjective or not is irrelevant. I'm
But
just saying.
I
on your
think
view.
it stems very specifically when two agents exist. And I think just like asking, well, what does evolution mean without life? Well, to me it's incoherent to ask what is moral if there's one agent. Because if there's just one agent, there is no social interactions, and thus there are no people
I
to
can
play the
change it
game.
to say there's 10.
10
Well,
compared to what?
Well, I mean, presumably you would think that like a world in which there's no life is worse than a world in which there's one agent in horrible pain, right? Like, I mean, I like.
Or if it's just constant pain.
Wait, what? That would,
But
that would be
I'm hoping
worse.
that's not our world. Yeah,
A
I'm
world
hoping
with-
that's not the world, and it's not the world we live in.
A world with nothing would be amoral. A world with a person in constant suffering would be immoral.
And that would be worse than a world in which there's no conscious life, right?
Yeah, that would be amoral. There'd be nothing.
Yeah, so a world in which there's one being in constant suffering is worse than a world in which there's no...
Right, because that'd be presumably the person doesn't want to suffer, so that would be immoral.
Right. And the reason why I think that the worst of all possible worlds is incoherent and the best of all possible worlds is thusly also incoherent is because you can always dream up a world that's worse, right? It's like the highest possible number
No, the
and the lowest
numbers
possible
don't matter
number.
here. It's a set. So the best of all possible worlds is a set of all conscious agents who exist can't be imposed upon, or all conscious agents who exist are in suffering. So it's not there. The number there is irrelevant. It's a complete set of all conscious agents, whatever that number is.
But why?
Right,
Even
then
though
you're committed to...
Go on one more.
So I just want to say, then you're committed to this view that a world in which there's one agent whose will is never imposed upon is the best of all possible worlds, as well as the world in which there's an infinite number of agents who are all...
Yes, it's a set. Literally, that's what set means. A set means all agents. So this the best of all possible worlds applies to all agents who exist, which I don't care about possible worlds here. Modality is irrelevant. This applies to our world. All agents who exist.
No. Look, it doesn't... Look, I'm saying that it seems obvious that the world in which there's more agents who are happy is better than a world in which there's less agents who are happy. Like, I think that most people, when you ask them, what do you think is a better world?
Those would both be the best of all possible worlds. They're in the same class, because the class is irrelevant to the number of people.
I understand that's your view. I understand that's your view. I'm just saying that when you ask most people, what do you think is a better world? One in which there's one agent who's always happy, and one in which there's 10 agents who are always happy, they're probably going to say, well, the one in which 10 agents is better.
Sure, because they presuppose the number of agents. The number of agents is irrelevant here. Those are both coherent. Those both conform with the best of all possible worlds. So there's no disagreement there. There's no criticism of one
very idiosyncratic.
There's nothing idiosyncratic.
I'm just saying that
there's nothing about that's idiosyncratic. Nothing. Zero. Nothing about that's idiosyncratic. The best of all possible
the reason I'm saying
all agents who exist in the system, whether that's 10 or 50 or 100, doesn't make a difference. So it's applying to all agents who exist in the system.
I know, but I'm saying that I think that most people are going to say that, World 2 is better than World 1 because there's more agents who are happy.
That's not a criticism. There's nothing idiosyncratic about this. You just don't understand the system. So
no, I do understand that both worlds are moral, and it doesn't matter about how many agents there are. I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying that most people are going to find this very counterintuitive.
There's nothing
myself.
counterintuitive there. You've said nothing that is counterintuitive about my model at all. Zero things you have said.
What? No, I'm saying that, look, can I just ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you think if you go up to most people, right, and you say, which do you think is a better world? One in which there's one agent who is constantly
and my model
happy,
agrees with
and
that.
one,
yes,
wait,
if there are more...
Hold on a sec. Hold on a second. Look.
If there are 10 agents who are all receiving moral things...
Can I finish my sentence, please?
No, because I've already answered this. So if there's a world with 10 people...
You said that I could ask you a question.
If there's a world with 10 people who are all getting moral things, and there's a world with one person getting moral things, there are more moral things with the 10 people. That world is better. More moral things. My world model agrees with this.
You just said it wasn't better.
No. I just said it was better. What are you talking about? Obviously, if there's 10 people receiving moral things, there's more moral actions going on in this world than the first world. They would both be the best of all possible worlds.
So that world is better than the other world in which there's only one agent.
Better is an ambiguous word that can mean many different things. If by better you mean has more moral actions, the one with 10 clearly has more moral actions. They would both be in the class of the best of all possible worlds.
And my plea why would actually be that although maybe we're just doing this because we do need to argue and get a better understanding of morality, I still want to say that you may be closer to a lot of our positions than what I feel is the theistic morality, which is what I'm going to keep on attacking to see if they can come out, which is they call it the objective morality, but ultimately it goes back to this mind thing, this conscious thing that would be ultimately, come back to that word, arbitrary. And so they are selling a false product while we're trying to figure out what it is. So come join our team. The water's fine. You may actually not be too far off, but I would say at least the atheists, the agnostics are trying to figure out what this thing we call morality and ethics is.
Look, my point is I don't think that the best of all possible worlds is a coherent notion.
You've said nothing
because
that shows it's incoherent.
You can always think of one better.
That's such a stupid response. Pull your head out of your ass.
Hold on a second.
The best of all possible worlds is a class.
Wait, am I allowed to finish?
No, because what you're saying is so inanely stupid. Like it's baffling how stupid what you're saying is.
What?
The best of all possible worlds is the model to create a world such that all conscious agents who exist in that world, none of them can be imposed upon without their consent. This is independent of the number. Infinite, positive, infinite, I don't care. The same rule applies in all cases. The best moral thing to do is create this world where it's impossible for any conscious agents to be forced to do things they don't consent to doing of any number. This includes all the numbers you add. So you're not making an objection. There's no objection to anything you said there. That's still within the model of the best of all possible worlds.
But you said that world where there's 10 agents who are happy is better than a world where there's one agent.
Better is an ambiguous word. There are more moral actions taking place.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second.
This is irrelevant. This is, again, your inane stupidity.
Hold on. Wait. Look, I let you finish, right? When you cut me off, so just let me finish. So, a world in which there's 10 agents who are constantly happy is better than a world in which there's one agent who is constantly happy, which means, presumably, that a world in which there's 11 agents who are happy is better than a world in which there's only 10 agents who are happy. And it seems like you can constantly say, you can constantly just add the amount of agents there ad infinitum. So there's no quote unquote best of all possible worlds in that sense. Now,
they're all the best. That entire class. Again, stop talking. I've answered this 3 times. I will mute you. I will mute you.
They're all the best.
Shut up.
Hey guys. Yeah. maybe, I'm wondering, why is it that quantity is so important? Shouldn't it just be quality? And then in which case it shouldn't matter how many agents are involved, right?
Well, so the question here, this dumbass is conflating the word best and the word better. The word best in this context refers to all conscious agents of any fucking number. So it does not matter if you add more, it's still the best. It's all conscious. Best means all conscious agents. That's it. And so he's saying, oh, well, if you just add one, well, that's a better one. It's still the best. This is not hard to understand. The term best of all possible worlds,
I agree,
mean all conscious agents who exist in the system. So if you add any number, they all get the same level of freedom. This is what matters, is the level of freedom. They can't be forced to do things they don't consent to doing. However many people you add there makes no difference to the argument, because the relevance is the principle we should be applying to these people to make the world moral. All conscious agents who exist should not be able to be forced to do things they don't consent to doing. That's the moral relevance. The number of people here is irrelevant, because any number of people, they should every single existing conscious agent should be applied the same rule. That's the relevant part. That's what makes it the best. All conscious agents of any number who exist. Adding more makes no difference. Taking away makes no difference. Any number. And he just does not get, because he's trying to hyper focus on this criticism of trying to make a gotcha moment of, oh, well, better, it means more of them. No, because best is a set, an infinite set that applies to all of them, because the relevance isn't the word best, and conflating it with the word better makes no difference. This is a dumbass argument. Only dumbasses who are stupid make this argument.
I agree that the number of them doesn't make it better. And sorry, just a sec. I run into this when I'm debating with theists sometimes, who will say, and I'm not saying you're a theist, but and I'm not saying you're doing this particular argument specifically, but I'm just trying to show a parallel. People, sometimes atheists will say, oh, so this is, their God is maximally powerful. And then I'll say, well, how do you rule out the possibility of it being multiple gods? And it has to be only one, because they're insisting only one. And their instant reaction is, well, if there's multiple, then they're not all maximally powerful. It's kind of, I'm going in a different direction now. It's like I'm going downwards here a little bit. But I really don't think, I think like Tom Jump's argument just now, like what he's saying makes a lot of sense, because if 1 or 10 or 100 gods or deities are maximally powerful, they're all maximally powerful. They're all equal in power, and it doesn't matter how many there are. You have that maximum stopping point. You can have a bunch of batteries, a bunch of 9-volt batteries, and they all have a maximum output of 9 volts. It doesn't matter if you have 1 of them or 10 of them or 100 of them, as long as they're not connected together. They all have a maximum of 9 volts each, and that's it.
Yeah, the symmetry breaker here is that you're not going to say that one world is sort of like has more volts, so one battery has more volts than the other one, right? Whereas in the best possible world cases, you can say that one world is better than the other, but they're both best of all possible worlds, because the best of all possible worlds refers to the set of all worlds in which there are no agents who are being imposed upon, right? And that seems really strange, right? And I don't know why you server muted me.
Every single philosopher understands this. Everyone I've talked to, there's nothing strange about that.
I don't know why you server muted me, because I was going to clarify the point you just made, right? That the best of all possible worlds refers to the set, right? I understand that. So when you server muted me and went on that sort of talk about that, that's what I was going to clarify. So I don't know why you server muted me, because I said, just hold on a second, I'm going to clarify, and you server muted me.
Why are you still talking? Get to the point, because I'm just going to debunk you again, because it's all I have to do, because you keep saying stupid things. I debunk you and you repeat the same stupid things.
I'm not making an argument that your view is incoherent. I'm making an argument that your view is a little bit strange.
There's nothing strange about that. What? Go ahead. Try to explain what's strange about that.
The reason it's strange is that, or at least it sort of clashes with other people's intuitions, is that if you go up to like pretty much anyone and you think that, if and you say if world A is better than world B, then if you're going to say the best of all possible worlds, they're probably going to say world A because it's better than world
Again,
B.
this is you making
So I
a
don't know
dumbass
what
mistake. You have made the same dumbass mistake
Wait,
again.
do you think
Best
what
and
did I
better
say
are
wrong
two
just
separate
there?
classes. They don't mean the same thing. They're completely separate.
Well, I get that. I get that, but what did I say that was incorrect?
That there is some kind of inconsistency or that people wouldn't understand. I forget the word you used.
I said exactly the opposite. You're not listening to me. I said exactly the opposite. I'm not saying there's an inconsistency in your view. I'm not saying there's a contradiction. I'm saying that when you go up to somebody and you say, what do you think is a better world, right? A world in which 10 people are happy or a world in which there's only one person that's happy, they're probably going to say, well, I think a world in which 10 people
Yes,
are
which
happy.
does not
And
in
you say,
any way show any, I don't know, pick a word.
I know that. I know. Calm
Incredulity. There's
down.
no
Look,
incredulity. There's no incredulity between that and my model. Nothing. 0 parts of my model conflict with people's intuitions there. 0 parts.
but when you think of best, when people say,
Yes,
okay,
the
what do you
word,
think
if they
is
don't
more likely?
understand the
Hold
technical
on,
usage, will
hold on a
conflict with
second.
the
Hold
word
on a
in
second.
colloquial
Look,
usage. I don't care.
Randolph, can you mute him if he like keeps over talking me? Because it's like impossible. So the point is that if you go up to somebody, right, and you know, you say to them, you
This
know,
is
what do you
taking
think
too
is the
long. You're
best of
just
all
repeating the same
possible?
thing. Okay, so let me clarify. If I use the word best and I don't explain
You
to them
keep on
the technical usage,
over-talking me, and it's really hard to get my.
if I go up to them and say the word best, they're going to think of it in the same context of the word better. And then I have to explain to them the technical usage of the word best. Problem solved. There is no longer an intuitive disagreement between the models. Immediately solved. Everything you're bringing up is irrelevant bullshit. No one cares. There is no problem. There is no inconsistency. There is no challenge between intuitions of everyday people there. Nothing. There is no problem that you're talking about. You're bringing up a nothing. If I don't explain to them, this is the problem you're bringing up. If I don't explain to them the technical usage of the word best in relevance to my model, then they'll think, oh, well, it might just mean my intuitive usage of the word. Oh, no, I don't care. That isn't actually a problem. Because in science, when you use a technical usage like universe, and it doesn't agree with their intuitive usage colloquially, this isn't the problem. We don't care. This is not an objection. Stop with the stupid.
I mean, you keep on over talking me, and it like I
Yes,
find
because
it
I've
very
answered your
difficult to
question
like.
10 times correctly, and you still haven't understood that I've answered your question. You keep repeating the same mistake that I've answered and told you that was a mistake and showed you how it was a mistake, and you repeat the same mistake.
It's really hard to get my thought across when I keep getting
You've
over
already
talked,
gotten
but I'm
it
happy to
across
go on.
and repeated it 10 times, and I've answered it 10 times.
I'm happy to go on modern day debate and discuss
me.
particularly your model. Sorry,
Pay me.
I don't want to pay
And you're
you.
not doing it. So
but
I've answered your question. Your question has been answered. Everybody understands that your question has been answered. You're
no,
done.
I wanted to talk about your moral system simpliciter on modern day debate if you're willing
If
to.
you pay me, otherwise, no. I'm not wasting my time with you.
So just so you know, when people wanted to debate T-Jump, his policy is on these formal debates to somebody has to pay him for his time to do that.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, like, I think Godless Girl said that she'd like be willing to like do that, but I'm just saying, like, I thought you would do it for free if it was on like
Nope,
modern day
pay me.
debate. Are you
I'm
saying
not wasting my time on you. I've already answered your question. It's been done.
No, I wasn't even going to talk about this issue I'm talking about now.
Any
I'm talking
issue. I don't care. You are a waste of time. You bring up nothing but pedantic misunderstandings of words that are irrelevant to the actual topic. You aren't intellectually capable of steelmanning the position to get to the actual topic, and you waste time on semantic irrelevancies. You are a waste of my time. And I just have to keep explaining to you the same point to get you to try to understand the steelman, which you are incapable of intellectually grasping, and we just waste time on semantics. So you are nothing but a waste of time. Like,
Wait,
if I can explain my point and everyone else can understand it just fine, and you bring up a semantic irrelevancy, you are a waste of time. Everyone else is understood.
Do you think I can't? Do you think I can't steelman your position?
Probably. No, I don't think you can.
Okay, right. Well, I have a go. Right. So you're saying that the best of all possible worlds just refers to a set of all worlds in which there are no impositions of will. It doesn't matter how many people there are, right? Whether there's one person, 10 people, or an infinite number, it doesn't matter how many people there are. What it means for something to be the best of all possible worlds is just
my position
for there to be no imposition of will.
What is my position in response to your argument?
No, in response to your argument, you're saying argument. That my particular argument.
Yeah, so you made the argument that there is a intuitive discrepancy between people's intuitions and my model, right? That was your argument.
Yeah, I think that most people, if you ask them,
wait, yeah, I got that part. So what is my response to that argument? Steelman, my response to that argument.
Yeah, well, what you said was that once you explain the terminology, the difference between best and better, the way you're understanding the terms, they're going to understand what you're saying, and they're going to accept how you use the terms.
Close, not right. So if there is a technical usage of a term and it disagrees with the colloquial usage, that isn't an intuitive disagreement, right? Do you understand that? Like scientific, there's a technical usage of universe and there's a colloquial usage, and that's not a problem. There's no issue there.
I don't think by technical usage, do you mean the usage that you're particularly using?
For my morality, clearly.
Okay, right. So I was correct when I say technical usage. When I said your particular usage, I meant technical usage, right?
That's great.
So I was actually
so the objection was there is an intuitive disagreement between my model and everyday people. That's incorrect.
Specifically, I think that most people are going to use the terms very differently. And when you say best of all possible worlds, that colloquially, yeah.
And that's fine, because there can be a discrepancy between the colloquial usage and the scientific usage. That's fine. That doesn't matter.
Scientific. Yeah, so I did steelman you, right?
You were close, not quite. So it's totally fine.
I was exactly
wait.
correct.
No, you weren't. So it's totally fine to have a difference in definitions between a scientific, technical usage and a colloquial, right? There's no issues there.
No, I get that, right? But I'm saying that
so
I was
there's no
completely
issues
correct.
with my usage of my best of all possible worlds. Your problem is just dissolved.
I never said there's a Look, I never said there's a contradiction.
I said issue. I don't care what the issue is.
I'm saying you're using terms in a very idiosyncratic way.
Well, clearly, but that's not an objection. There's no objection there. This is why I say you don't say anything of any objective meaning.
I said that at the start, and you said no, you're not using it in an idiosyncratic way. So what? What?
That was to a totally different term. That was a totally different term.
Idiosyncratic way.
No, the word best in the word best of all possible worlds is a technical usage. So that's an idiosyncratic way, clearly.
Yeah, but that's what I said at the start, and you denied that.
Different. Like idiosyncratic.
What was I referring to? I can't remember.
Moral principles or something. But again, this is why you're just a waste of time. You've brought up no actual criticisms of nothing relevant to anybody.
Well, I'm just saying that the way you're using the terms is very... I don't think many professional philosophers actually accept the way you're using these terms either.
What? It's a label. It's a noun. Best of all possible worlds is a noun. It's a label for my model. So the only people who accept it are the people who understand my model. This isn't a debate. It's a title. Clearly, titles are used idiosyncratically.
I mean, all your model says is that it's if it's an imposition of will, then it's immoral.
Involuntary, yes. Well, again, you've said nothing of content. Nothing you have said has brought up any content. There was no criticism on my model. There's nothing for me to address. You're just saying, oh, hey, look, semantic bullshit. Nothing you've said is of value. The entire time you've been on the stage, there has been nothing of value.
Well, I mean, that's a bit mean. I don't think that's entirely true either.
What value? What is the value of anything you've said? I use an idiosyncratic label, a title for my model, best of all possible worlds, that has an idiosyncratic meaning because it's literally a noun for my model. Clearly, okay. 3 hours of conversation
look.
wasted. Great job, bro.
Well, look, I'm just saying that the way you're using terms when you say, "Oh, it's the best of all possible worlds," but most people are gonna sort of not really understand what you
Yes, that's
you
why I had
mean
to
Just
by
explain
that.
it
repeating
better.
yourself. Let's move on.
Clearly.
We have other people with their
Wait.
hands up. Maybe Darth Dawkins wants to talk to us.
That'd be
Oh,
preferable.
he disappeared.
Well,
He was in the audience for like a split second and then he vanished. But we have two
yeah,
people with their hands up. Let's move on. Well, you've made your
the
argument
next one,
repetitively over and over again.
the next one will be Sunny. So
Can I say one more thing and then I'll leave?
one more thing. I will give you 30 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you last time I brought up Fodor's argument, you misunderstood it. If I send you something, can you read it? T-Jump.
If you pay me, otherwise no.
I mean, you misunderstood Fodor's argument, but I'll send it to you. But
No,
it's
don't
up to you
waste
if
my
you
time.
read
Pay
it.
me or go away.
Okay, so this unfortunately wasn't the most pleasant conversation. Thank you for joining us. We'll perhaps talk again in the future.
Sure.
So our next guest is Sunny. Sunny,
Hey, what's
welcome.
up, guys?
Thank you for joining
Hi.
us.
Yeah, no problem. I guess I'm curious to hear your guys' takes on induction and whether like it has kind of a suitable justification.
Suitable for what?
Just like whether it's convincing or not. Or like here, I'll just ask first. Yeah, did you guys like conform to this idea that induction leads you to truth?
If you're going by like a fallibilist definition, it's not really a problem. If you're going by some like JTB formulation, then you might think it's a problem.
When you're talking, yeah, when you're referring to like a fallibilist position, I am kind of like interested. Like, how would you define knowledge under that?
Well, I'll just quickly state, like, for our audience or people who aren't familiar with inductive reasoning, I'll just read it out here. It says, according to Google, inductive reasoning is a method of reasoning in which a general principle is derived from a body of observations. It consists of making broad generalizations based on specific observations.
Yeah, so something like if the sun rose, every single day in the past, presumably we can interpret that it will rise tomorrow, or we have good reason to assume that, or something like that. And I guess what I'm asking is like, why, just to you guys, what is like the justification to which you kind of assume that to be? Like on the Munchausen trilemma, like what was the kind of main thing?
I think T-Jump is going to start from a cogito foundationalism.
Yep.
I subscribe to Hack's foundarentism. I think you could have the wrong starting point, and you could find out and reevaluate whatever your starting point was along the way. And I think the thing that we're going to agree on, though, is that the thing that's going to determine what is or isn't valid inference as you go along is going to depend on what is or isn't demonstrable and predictable in reality. So if you, like in the crossword analogy, if you start out the puzzle with one word that you're absolutely sure about at the beginning, you're totally convinced that it's right. And then at the end, you're like, damn, that was a really tricky one. The one that I thought was the most obvious at the beginning turned out to just be different and to be a tricky question. Well, the reason that you're able to use guessing, aka induction and inference, like the clues in the crossword, in combination with deduction, like two things that are mutually incompatible, falsification and scientific theory selection and so on, where there's a falsification criteria for some beliefs. You use those in combination until eventually you have a view that is maximally in alignment with everything that is observed. It's empirically adequate, has explanatory scope for all the facts and predicts all the future facts and so on. That would be something like an ideal model of the world. Now, you could still be a fallibilist about it and think that it's possible you could be wrong, but you'd be justified in thinking that if you were attempting to go about eliminating errors and making the most reasoned inductions along the way, that you would be getting closer to filling out the crossword than not.
Right. I guess what if I'm gonna like label this pretty simply, it seems like, you know, justification. That this is kind of what I'm interested in is this idea of like if we have some sort of inference, all the it's going to be built from some sort of like accumulation of premises, and then we would need, of course, inferences for those premises, and then so on and so on and so on. So I guess what I'm for something like induction, it seems like that's an inference to assume something else. But as an inference, what would be the justification? Like for induction specifically, yeah.
Yeah, so I have to confess I haven't read this book, but I think it's worth looking into if you think this is an important problem. It's like I assume you're addressing this all in relation to Hume's problem of induction, right?
Sort of, but it's kind of more general than that, and more of just like an epistemic, like you know, nihilist kind of sense. But what Hume was saying with like rationalism and empiricism, that's also a way to look at it. What I'm more looking to understand though is just like in terms of if you look at this idea of the sun will rise tomorrow because it's risen every single day in the past, if that seems like a valid, you know, measure to understanding what's true, I guess what I'm really asking is that just like an intuition that you like seems right, or is there some sort of justification prior to that?
Well, two things. One is you can make a deductive theoretical justification for it being meta-optimal to use induction. And like I said, I haven't read the book in full, but there's a book by Gerhard Schertz called Hume's Problem Solved, The Optimality of Meta-Induction, where he makes the case that there's like a mathematical case for induction being the best possible strategy to understand the world, regardless of any evidence that it has worked in the past or not, or anything like that. So he's making a deductive case that induction is meta-optimal. So let's just say that we were trying to like justify induction inductively, and we made 3 inductions and they all failed. Well, we might conclude that induction is bogus and we can't rely on it because, well, our first 3 examples were failures, so that's 0 out of 3, so inductively induction doesn't work or something, right? But he's saying, no, there's a deductive case that can be made for it. I just don't care about this problem enough to look into it, to be honest, but it's worth looking at if you do.
So yeah, I guess I'll check that out. But I guess would you say, I guess you haven't really concerned yourself with the problem, but how would you answer that? Would you just kind of say that it's somewhat foundational, that induction is self-evidently, you know, true or leads to truth?
I think it seems meta-optimal, and I'm not saying I understand his case fully enough to justify it, but it seems to me plausible that it is meta-optimal, and we have no reason to doubt it, I think. So,
like phenomenal conservatism, something like that?
Sure.
Well, I don't think because we don't have reason to doubt something doesn't mean we should adapt it. Like, we might not have reason to doubt, you know, the fact that there's like an external world, or that we understand the external world. That doesn't mean that we should then adopt some sort of you know, idea of what that external world is just because we don't have reason to reject the idea, right? Like you can just you withhold your judgment until further notice.
Yeah, and like you could be like a scientific anti-realist and still do valid science.
Yes.
There's lots of like minimal versions of commitments that are workable, but it seems like sometimes they're missing a commitment to the assumption that there is something being worked towards at all, right? So like the scientific realist wants to say that the reason that we do science is because we're trying to better approximate some real state of affairs. And some model is going to be preferable over another model because it does that, right? And I mean, I talked to somebody recently about constructivism, scientific constructivism, which is a view put forward by what's the guy's name? But it's basically just saying, you know, like minimally speaking, like a person who doesn't hold to naturalism or something like that can still do science. Like they don't have to have a commitment to the same metaphysics as other scientists to still be doing science, as long as they're doing explanation of facts and so on. And it doesn't matter what they believe.
Yeah, if I were to ask you, would you say that you're agnostic onto whether induction is like a valid form?
No, I don't think I would have to be agnostic about it because it seems like it's well justified. It agrees with everything. It predicts everything. And there's philosophers who've made the case that it's meta-optimal. I just don't see any reason to doubt it.
But that's not really what I'm asking, I guess. I'm not asking whether you have reason to doubt it, because I don't, if we have some sort of set of beliefs, right, we're not looking for the reason to doubt them, we're looking for the reason to adopt them. So this idea of induction, right, I'm asking you, what is that justification?
So the meta-optimal thing is his answer there. So like if you give all possible worlds and take all possible systems, and one of the systems works more often than every one of the other ones to get true beliefs in all possible worlds, you have a justification for using that system without using induction. And if induction is that system, you now have a justification to use induction without using induction, and so you're justified in using induction.
Right. Okay. So it's like, you say that one more time, just so I can like write it down.
So if you have all possible worlds and you have all possible epistemic systems, and one of these systems works better to accurately get true beliefs than all of the others, then that system you're justified to use without using induction, right? Because it works better. If you just take all possible worlds and apply this system in all possible worlds, it gets more of the correct answers than all of the others. Therefore, you're justified in using that system. And if that system is induction, you're justified in using induction without using induction.
It seems like that begs the question, though, because if you're saying that you have all these possible worlds and this system seems to work the most, so like
it's not just that it seems to work the most empirically. So let me actually read the description of the book, right?
Sure, but
so acknowledging, because this will make sense, I think if you just hear the actual description.
Sure.
It's almost exactly what T-Jump said, but maybe it'll make sense hearing the way the authors put it.
Right before you say it, I'm just gonna open a doc just so I can like write on my computer.
I pasted it in the chat. It's already pasted in the chat. The link to the book. And I've DM'd it to you as well. Okay.
Perfect.
So Hume's problem of justification, of justifying induction has been among epistemology's greatest challenges for centuries. In the book, Schertz proposes a new approach to Hume's problem. Acknowledging the force of Hume's arguments against the possibility of a non-circular justification of the reliability of induction, Schertz demonstrates instead the possibility of a non-circular justification of the optimality of induction, or more precisely of meta-induction, the application of induction to competing prediction models. Drawing on discoveries in computational learning theory, Schertz demonstrates that a regret-based learning strategy, attractivity-weighted meta-induction, is predictively optimal in all possible worlds amongst all prediction methods accessible to the epistemic agent. Moreover, the a priori justification of meta-induction generates a non-circular a posteriori justification of object induction. Taken together, these two results provide a non-circular solution to Hume's problem. Schertz discusses the philosophical debate on the problem of induction, addressing all major attempts at a solution to Hume's problem, describing their shortcomings, presents theorems accompanied by a description of computer simulations illustrating the content of these theorems, with proofs presented in a mathematical appendix, which defends, refines, and applies core insights regarding the optimality of meta-induction, explaining applications in neighboring disciplines, including forecasting sciences, cognitive science, social epistemology, and general evolution theory. Finally, Schertz generalizes the method of optimality-based justification to a new strategy of justification in epistemology, arguing that optimality justifications can avoid the problems of justificatory circularity and regress. And I think this is exactly why Hack's foundationism is appealing, right? Hack is just saying, like, if you're going to do a crossword puzzle, there's going to be like a meta-optimal strategy for doing it, right? And even if you don't know what that is at the beginning, if you are working at solving the puzzle, you eventually approximate the meta-optimal strategy, even if you never knew what it was.
So maybe I'm misunderstanding, but I'll try and. So is it basically like if there are a whole bunch of epistemic systems, and induction seems to be the one that has led to truth the most, and we should ascribe to.
Not has. Will mathematically in all possible worlds lead to. That's the claim being made.
What's the justification for that claim? Sorry, maybe I'm not understanding, because it just seems like
there's going to be like some mathematical simulations that he's providing to justify it. And like I said, I'm not a physicist either. I haven't like understood all the physics of all the physics papers that I accept, but I haven't seen a defeater to this, and I've seen it talked about favorably in the literature. I'm relying on experts' opinions here.
Right. I mean, to me, it just seems like it's hard for me to I guess engage with that response, right? Because it's like a mystical mathematical process that's just gonna do the work, right?
It's not that hard to understand. It's like if you have all possible worlds, suppose there's one of you in every possible world where everything happens. Magical pink elephant's going to sit on your head in 5 seconds.
Sure.
Any predictive model that anybody has access to, us humans, when we apply every single predictive model to every single possible universe, which one gets the answer right more than any of the others? Well, induction.
Right.
Induction is the one that gets the answer right more than any others. We don't have any other predictive model that can get the answer right more often in any of the possible worlds.
Could I ask, when you say gets the answer right, would you say that that's synonymous to saying to has gotten the answer right?
I don't think so. Like, so in these universes,
That's not what Schertz is saying.
In all possible worlds, we know everything that's going to happen in every instance because literally everything that can happen will happen in every instance. And so if we want to apply a model, it's going to get it wrong. Like if you're using induction, you're going to get the answer wrong. If a pink elephant's going to pop into existence and sit on your head in 5 seconds, you got the answer wrong. That's not inductively. You're not going to infer that inductively. But if you're going to infer the sun's going to rise tomorrow, you're going to get that one right. That's induction got that one right. And so if we just count all of them up and say, well, which model got most right answers? Induction's going to get the most right answers of all of the known epistemic models we have. Like, that's not really
So
controversial.
maybe if I'm getting this right, well, I would agree. I would say that induction has gotten the most right answers.
No.
Like it is the system.
No. So like if we apply this, say we don't exist, we're in the ether with God. No worlds have ever existed. And God's going to poof every world into existence of all possible worlds. And we're like, well, which epistemic system would people get the most right answers with if he did this? Induction.
Right. I guess I'm asking for because I'm not sure if that just seems like being postulated. I don't know what your justification would be to assume that that would be the system.
Wait, what do you mean that's being postulated? So like we can literally analyze this in our head. So like if there's a world where a pink elephant pops in front of your head and crushes you, do we have any epistemic models that would predict that? Well, as far as I know, not really. We don't have any epistemic models.
Well, that's just it. It's as far as I know.
No.
Right. So it's like
we're only using epistemic models we know about. We can't say hypothetically there might be some other epistemic model we don't know about because we're only assessing the ones we know about.
No, but the point I'm trying to understand is it seems to assume it because I feel like what this is trying to do, it's trying to get away from like the past because in order to talk about induction in a way that's not circular, we need to leave this past. Sure. So to put this in this ether of like everything has already happened and we're assuming, and then induction is supposedly the best one. It seems like that idea when you say, well, induction will be the best method. Or something like that, if we put it in an ether of like all time, that assumes that induction. I'm looking for the justification to assume that will be the case, that induction will be the best method.
Okay, so
because we understand in the past it has.
No. Yeah. So we have a set of epistemic methods, like God's revelation. That's one of them. God tells me, and I'm going to predict that's going to happen. Of all of these methods of epistemic knowledge that we use to predict the future. In all possible worlds that could ever be, the only one that we know about that can work more often than any of the other ones we know about is induction. It's just a fact. There's nothing more you need to justify this. It's definitively a fact. None of the other methods can accurately predict anything in any of these possible worlds other than the one they happen to be lucky enough to get things right into. Induction works in many of the possible worlds.
That's what I'm trying to understand, though. I'm looking for the justification for that claim. That would be the case, that induction is the thing. Like, because we're not talking about the past or present now. We're talking about looking at through this with like a God lens, right?
So all possible.
So I'm looking for the justification. Yeah, so I'm looking for the justification to why is it that we can now, through this God lens, see that induction is the thing that has worked, and that is not the case that just God's revelation started working a lot better. Like, that's what I'm looking for.
So which part isn't making sense here? So like the God's revelation part would only work in the one world where everything in the Bible happens essentially or something. So like the Bible predicts the revelation, people will disappear, stuff like that. That's going to happen in one of the possible worlds, probably a few of them. But induction predicts the sun will rise tomorrow. And that's going to happen in that world pretty much all the time. And in pretty much all of the logically possible worlds or a large portion of them, probably like 10%, I guess. Let's go 10%. Where random stuff, it's going to happen in the majority because logically possible means everything's possible. So most of them are just have random gibberish happen. And so you're going to have to apply a system to make predictions. Now, most of the systems are going to fail in all the random gibberish ones. Like by definition, if it's random, you're not going to be able to make any kind of predictions. You're going to do some kind of systematic method to make predictions, and that system is only going to work in a minority of all possible worlds. And so which of these systems is the most broad that would apply to more of those small minority than all the other ones? And then of all the ones we have, induction is the one that would do that. We don't have another one that would apply to the limited number of all possible worlds that isn't just random gibberish, that has some kind of coherent system that...
So, yeah, sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
No, it's just, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I get what you're saying with the God thing. Like, in order for the God thing or the God justification to be valid in, the worlds, God would need to be present in those worlds, right?
No.
But if we were to just have... Sorry, what?
Well, no, you wouldn't actually need God there. Like, you can have visions of God, and the visions could potentially accurately predict the future, even if there's no God.
Oh, that's fine then. Yeah, sure. Okay, so let's say we have these visions with God, right? What I'm trying to understand is we can't infer, so we can't base our justification to assume why induction would be the proper method in this all possible world thing based on induction working in the past, right? You would grant that. Okay, so if we're not going to do that, so let's say we just have, I'll have two possibilities. So like we've got induction and then we've got God revelation. And God revelation can be just visions, for example.
Sure.
So if we have these two possibilities, what I'm asking is, if we can't infer induction being the proper one from the past, then why are we inferring that induction will be the one that applies itself more broadly?
So like if I have all possible worlds and all of them have a red dot in them or something, and my model predicts a red dot, and some other model doesn't predict a red dot, then my model would predict more things correctly than the other model, right?
Yeah, I'm asking though, why would we assume induction would do that?
Because we have a list of all of the epistemic systems humans have ever come up with. We have a list of them. We can apply them to all logically possible worlds, and we can see which ones will get the more broad, correct things right.
Oh, yeah, sorry, that's what I'm looking for, is how can we see which one would get the more things right?
You take the system and say, what is the largest set that this thing could apply to? So like if we...
So
all possible worlds, all random things are going to happen, right? All random things will happen. Of these random things that happen, the thing follow a pattern like induction. That universe, this pattern is going to hold the entire way through the universe. And anything that holds a similar kind of pattern is going to hold through most of the universe, and with the couple exceptions of the random stuff that only happens a few times. Things that are purely random have no pattern to them, so they're not going to be predictable. And so the pattern that has the most uniformity, will be the one that is going to be the most applicable to the most worlds for the most time to get the most true things correct. Because if it's only not uniformitarily true, like if only God says it'll happen occasionally or whatever, and so you'll only get a couple things true, then it won't be a system to get the most true facts correct. So if you have a system, if you have an epistemic system that makes statements about a uniform system that will apply across time or whatever, there's going to be one possible world where you get every single true fact correct. But there's also going to be analogous worlds where you get lots of true facts correct. If it's just random, like on God's whim, he will make a burning bush, tell a drunk guy to build a raft or whatever. That's very specific. It's very specific. And so the amount of possible worlds that gets that statement correct is going to be significantly less than the amount of worlds where the sun will rise tomorrow is going to be correct. Would you grant that? Because level of specificity, like if I make a prediction, there is a God, that statement is more likely to be true than there is a God with a pink leprechaun on his shoulder, right? That's a more specific statement. So there's less possible.
Sure, yeah.
So if I have a epistemic principle that's more broad, for the same reason, it's going to get more things true than one that's a very specific principle, right?
So if the principle in this case be like, based on events from the past, we can infer based on some pattern that they will occur in the future? Is that like the principle that is being understood?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So here, I guess, if for example, if there was a principle that was simple in that sense, right? It didn't rely on a whole bunch of particular individual like instances. It was just a principle like that. But we've never understood this principle to work. There would be no discrepancy with like its how broad it was.
No. So we know all possible worlds here. So since we know all possible worlds, that system, because it's more broad, will work in a higher number of all possible worlds than a very specific system, because specific system is going to happen in less of the possible worlds.
Right, but what I'm saying is that if there is a system that is as specific or whatever, I'm not sure if I'm fully understanding the specificity idea, but if there is one, then there would be no discrepancy to be had, and you would grant that it's like, okay, well, in that case, then we don't have grounds to assume induction.
What? I didn't follow that.
So let's say we have this induction principle, and that's like we can assume future events based on whether there was some pattern in the past,
Sure.
right? And then we have the let's say induction 2.0, and that's like we can assume future events based on things in the past if they're ping, right?
Sure.
You would say that the first system is more general,
Yeah.
so the first system we should
The
assume
first
that
system will get more true beliefs than the second system.
Okay, sure. So in that sense, if there was a principle that was like simple in that sense, that wasn't induction, so just a different principle that we based our epistemic
Well, the crux here is it has to predict. It
justification
has to
on.
be a predictive principle. So it has to predict the future. But yes.
Right. So so that you would then grant that as being fine.
Sure. Like let's say your principle is stuff happens. Yes, that one's going to get it right even more than induction will. That one's going to get even more right things than induction, but it's not going to be very useful.
Right. Okay. I guess I would have to think about that idea for a little bit. But yeah.
Cool.
Maybe I'll. Yeah. Sorry.
I just said cool. So yeah, that sounds good.
So Sonny, I would suggest you read the book if you think this is an important problem to study. It's worth your time to actually look at the main response to Hume's problem of induction.
All right. Well, thanks, guys.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us. So, anybody have any thoughts on all of this? Because that was a pretty heavy topic.
Did that make sense to you guys, Randolph, Amy, Ix? I assume Ix probably got it, but did Randolph and Amy, did you guys understand the specificity aspect?
Yeah, actually, that made sense to me. Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about that when you were actually talking about it. I'm thinking, yeah, this seems like the right way to go. I wonder if Amy stepped away from her microphone.
Her mind is just blown.
Oh, that could be. We're going to have to figure out how to help her.
Oh, look, Catholic Traditionalist is here.
Catholic Traditionalist, welcome. Thank you for joining us. How are you today?
Oh yeah, it's a wonderful day today on this Lord's Day. I have a question for T-Jump. What's your understanding of logic? Your definition of logic?
It's a formal language created by humans to describe reality.
So it's just a language. So it has nothing to do with reasoning, mental functions?
Those are also things that it describes.
Okay, could you elaborate on that then? Is logic, is reasoning itself, is it required for logic to exist with regards to the mental functions in order to go ahead and reason out whatever it is that you're describing and making sentences of?
Is reason, is logic, so there are non-standard logics that exist with no reasoning that humans can do to mirror them. So like many-valued logic or quantum logic, our brains don't do that, but those logics can exist just fine without reasoning. Does that answer your question?
Now, those logics that you just pointed to, are they concrete or are they abstract?
Abstract.
Okay, so are they of the mind, is what you're saying?
Sure.
Okay, so then logic itself is of the mind. It's not, you don't believe that it exists outside of the mind, do you?
Well, logic is a way to describe reality. And so reality will operate on a way that it corresponds to one of the logics, which means it could correspond to the many-valued logic or something, in which case the many-valued logic would describe reality and it could accurately map onto reality.
Okay, that's fine. So it conforms with logic. But what I'm asking you is, with regards to logic itself, do you believe that it only exists as an abstract in the mind, or do you believe that logic itself can exist outside of the mind?
Oh yeah, logic itself, I
like
think, is
some sort of
purely a language.
metaphysical. Okay, so is it in the mind? So you're saying it is in the mind?
Yeah,
then?
yeah. All logic,
Only in the
all
mind.
logic are languages like English, Spanish, and Japanese. They all exist in the mind, nothing else.
So it does not exist outside of the mind.
Correct. Like the word gravity. The word gravity exists only in human minds. It describes something else that does exist, which is the essence of gravity. But gravity is just a word humans made up. Logic is just words humans made up to describe something more fundamental.
Okay. So like, for example, mathematics and all of this, reasoning and so forth, logic is used in all of this. You would agree?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, math not necessarily. So I know there was Russell's paradox. You can't bridge math and logic.
Logic isn't utilized, like in, for example, a mathematical word problem. Logic isn't being utilized.
You
there?
can combine them, but they don't have a one-to-one correlation. You can't map all of logic onto math and math onto logic. It doesn't work. It was tried by Bertrand Russell and Alfred North Whitehead, and they came up with Russell's paradox to show that you literally can't do that. It was one of the biggest problems in math for a while. Maths is British. Maths doesn't exist.
You said math does not exist?
I was commenting, somebody in my chat wrote maths, like the way the British people pronounce it, and I was like, that does not exist.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right. Well, I just wanted to find out because I do, I speak to other atheists as well, and they seem to agree with you that logic itself is only that which is in the mind. Now, would you agree that characteristics that we perceive in our mind, like, for example, a cube, triangle, that too is based on logic?
No. They can be described by logic. I don't think it's based on logic. No, I think we had shapes way before we had logic.
So we had shapes long before logic. Like we could actually imagine a triangle and know that it's a triangle simply because it has 3 sides and 3 points. But we didn't use logical reasoning in order to figure out that it has 3 sides and 3 points.
Well, again, logic and reasoning are languages. Go ahead, Randolph.
Sorry, yeah, art would be an example. Someone could use, it could be an art form. Somebody is drawing a triangle and not thinking logically about it at all. So, yeah, I would agree that we don't need logic for shapes.
Now, if they draw the triangle, how would they know to draw the triangle?
I just said if it was art, they could have drawn it accidentally. They could have just been a creative thing. It wouldn't have any basis in logic necessarily.
I see what you're saying, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about individuals that actually conceptualize it, truly conceptualize it in their mind, and distinguish it between other shapes, like, for example, a square, circle, stuff like that.
But if
logic is utilized for that, right?
Well, we compare faces. Sorry, we compare faces without needing to understand logic. So I don't see why we wouldn't be able to compare basic shapes without needing to know what they are or names for them or have a logical understanding of how they're formed.
Well, that's strange. Other atheists I've spoken to say that, yeah, you definitely need logic in order to distinguish between a circle, a square, a triangle.
Well, I think you're confusing usage and I forget what it is, meaning, usage, use reference fallacy. So what we call logic can be applied to things in the past, like reasoning that people were doing prior to the invention of logic. Standard logic, many-valued logic, can describe those things, even though standard and many-valued logic weren't invented until many years after triangles were invented. Triangles are also invented by humans. And can logic describe those things? Yeah, absolutely. Logic can describe things that happened way before logic was invented. Just like English can also describe things way before English was invented, like dinosaurs. English describes dinosaurs. Dinosaurs existed before English. That doesn't mean that logic existed back then.
How can logic describe these things if these things,
Sorry.
characteristics, are not based on logic?
Catholic, that's a good example by T-Jump there. Great examples. Amy was trying to speak when I was answering you earlier, and I just want to make sure we don't miss Amy.
It's all good. I sometimes jump in when I shouldn't because I get all excited. But I just want to, if it's a language, then it has to necessarily have an agent. And so before there were people, then there weren't actual logical conundrums.
And so if logic can explain these things, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, and just to add to Amy's point, but logic could still function.
Sure. I guess my other two-prong to that would also be, and I know you didn't say this, and I know that many who ask this don't, but I can't see also a connection to why a deity would then make any form of logic, or why that would be the foundation, or whichever word they want to call for it.
Oh, well, we believers believe that God is logic itself. He's the logos. But now, with regards to
that's just a claim.
Yeah, but it's God that made the claim. Now, with regards to logic,
he or she could show up, and then we would be able to use it as the foundation. But until
he
then,
did
it's
show
just
up.
a claim.
He did show up 2,000 years ago. But anyway, with regards to logic, if
not
logic
that we know
is,
of, or at least no academic
well, I know
sources would verify.
Catholic, stop getting distracted. Focus on the main topic.
Yeah. So that's what I'm trying. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get back on the whole logic thing with regards to what you said, TJ. So now, if logic, if logic is utilized to explain the characteristics of a given thing, then wouldn't that mean that the given things characteristics themselves are based on logic?
No, it's a composition division fallacy. So you can describe things using a system, and that system can refer to something. So like gravity, again, is a great example. We didn't invent or discover curvature of space-time until recently, past 200 years or so. But it still existed back then. And so what we call all these fancy equations that Einstein created, he made them up. They're made up by humans, but they describe something more fundamental. So logic describes something more fundamental that exists, which is reality. Reality exists, and reality operates in a way that we describe with logic. Logic didn't exist until humans made it up, but it describes something more fundamental, which is reality. And reality is what governs the properties of things. And logic didn't exist prior to humans, but logic describes reality and the way reality operates, which did exist before humans.
Well, let me put it this way. The perception of the characteristics themselves are based on logic, correct?
I don't understand that. No. Perception is
Well,
based
you
on
perceive things, and you utilize logic to perceive the things, right? To distinguish a circle from a square, right?
Well, so perception is completely independent of our internal ability to distinguish between the things we're perceiving. So perception is a thing done by the brain subconsciously, and even if you have no conscious experience, eyes still work just fine. So perception is separate from distinguishing things with logic. But I don't think that is relevant to your point.
That doesn't seem to make any sense. How can you distinguish something from another if you're not using logic to do so? I'm not understanding how that would be possible.
Your brain does it automatically. So like worms can distinguish between food and not food without ever having a brain.
Okay, but worms don't have higher function brain activity.
Correct.
We do. So a worm can't distinguish between a circle and a square. We can.
Oh no! So worms can distinguish between things just fine. Like the sensors that they use can distinguish between food and not food, hard rocks and soft dirt, nutrition, non-nutrition. Their brains distinguish between things all the time, and they have no logic. They have no brain.
Well,
I would say that maybe it could be argued that they have like a rudimentary, primitive type of logic, unlike ours. But
well, I'm talking about
I
things
find
like
it
C.
strange
elegans
that you
that
would
literally
say,
have no brain. Like there are organisms like bacteria. Bacteria distinguish between nutrients and non-nutrients, and they have no brain. They have no ability to think, no consciousness. They can still distinguish between things.
hey, okay, just so you know that most atheists disagree with you on that,
That
on
what?
your position with regards to logic not being utilized with regards to perceiving the characteristics of things.
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure most atheists would agree bacteria can distinguish between nutrients and non-nutrients without having a brain if they know anything about
Well,
biology.
I'm not talking about bacteria. I'm talking about with regards to you and I, humans, all the atheists I've ever spoken to. I've never spoken to even one atheist that holds your position.
And
So
they
who,
put syrup on their
who
pancakes.
can you tell me who it is that holds your Amy and Randolph, do you agree with T-Jump? And IX, do you agree with what T-Jump is saying?
Yeah.
Oh, so you do? Okay,
Yeah,
that's
actually,
interesting.
we're talking about here, like I made some points before, how we don't need to, like a person can use art or artistic skill or other skills that are not necessarily considered applications of logic or requiring an understanding of logic to compare things, like the difference between a triangle and a square. I did mention that earlier. So, yeah, when you're saying most atheists, I guess most atheists you're talking to, I guess you've branched out into a different part of the demographic. Congratulations. And I think this is good, and I hope we can talk more about this.
And I agree with what he's saying. I just have the asterisk that there are the physical laws that have been taking place before any agents were around. And now we use what we call logic, which is our written form, to make sense of the world. But I always want to know from a precept. I know he's gone now, but I always you just want to ask about Christianity because it's the one thing they don't want to talk about.
I was kind of waiting for him to proceed from whatever claims he was making about logic to the transcendental argument that God is necessary for logic, but he never got there. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know why he left. I didn't kick him.
He probably got disconnected or something. Maybe he'll come
Probably.
back.
Yeah, that was an interesting conversation. I want to talk with him some more. I have to go out for about 5 minutes, help my kids with something, but we have another guest here who wants to join us. Welcome to Solomon 1. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. I had a question for T-Jump. T-Jump, have you moved out of your mother's basement yet?
I was never in my mother's basement. So the dumb Muslims think I was in my mother's basement because my mom was visiting for a holiday during the debate. And so when I said, Mom, I'm working, it was actually because she was upstairs during the holiday. And the dumb Muslims think that means I was in my mom's basement, but that's dumb Muslim problems.
But also sending love to Gary Dark Dawkins, who legitimately lives with his mom.
Oh, bye-bye.
Used to.
Well, that may be true too.
Didn't even have to kick him. He just left on his own.
But those are just ad moms anyway. They can't defend their God.
So, Solomon, did you have a serious
He left. He
topic
left.
to raise?
Solomon left.
Solomon left?
Yeah, I didn't even kick him.
Oh.
Didn't even kick him.
Can I just say one last thing about Solomon? Not him, but just Solomon for Islam. There's a chapter, a surah called The Ant, and it's my favorite one because Solomon just has a conversation so hilarious with the ants that he falls over on his butt laughing. It's a good chapter.
I like the one where God grabbed the guy by his balls. That one was a good one.
Oh my, that sounds like a fantastic chapter.
Ballin.
So it's religion, so it probably doesn't end well.
Yep. Ballin, what do you got for us?
It's the fun. A question for T-Jump. Without God, as the origin, or a God as the origin of the universe, what would you posit as the origin? And then if it's if you consider that, if you consider belief in that a belief in like a faith, basically, in something that you can't understand, which would make it tantamount to the religious faith, or if you're just agnostic about it and you don't have any sort of claims on that, then what base foundation would you ground your ethics or morality or logic in?
So I would say quantum fields, and there's a third option there, which is things we have evidence for. We have evidence for quantum fields and the Casimir effect, which has been demonstrated in a lab empirically. And so quantum fields are the fundamental nature of reality that created the Big Bang, and they are demonstrable and have evidence that is independent of our imagination, unlike a God. So no, it would not be a faith claim. And I think something in the quantum fields is the grounds of objective morality, but that is a faith claim because we don't have any evidence of that.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
So you'd agree though that the science of the quantum fields or originating the Big Bang is incomplete, correct?
Sure.
And you'd also agree that the origination of quantum fields is not even on the table yet, right?
Since the consensus is that they are uncreated.
The word is not just incomplete.
Okay, so I mean, you're just winning by definition there, you know. You're just saying, like, well,
irony.
Do you know what underdetermined means, Volume?
Say again.
Do you know what the word underdetermined means?
In colloquial language, but not in science. No.
Okay, so when we're talking, it has a specific meaning to science. I don't even know if it has a colloquial usage. I've never heard it outside of the scientific context. So in science, we have many competing explanations for the same facts, right? So you could have 2 or 3 slightly different models that attempt to explain all the existing facts, and they're going to make some predictions or give some criteria for how they could be falsifiable. And then at some point in the future, we hope to falsify all but one of those, or just to narrow the field as much as possible. So we get to fewer models, right? So that's the state that we're in with regards to like interpretations of quantum mechanics, with regards to cosmology, with regards to how to unify gravity, Einsteinian relativity, and quantum electrodynamics. It's fine to say we're underdetermined, which is to say, we haven't decided exactly which of the explanations is right, or if there's one we haven't thought of. But it is the case that we have a number of proposals on the table, all of which could be the case and could be the explanation. Just because we don't have epistemic access to something and we can't narrow it down, having 3 plausible, mathematically valid explanations to the same problem is more evidence that those are likely true than a completely unjustified ad hoc thing that someone is positing as an alternative, aka God.
Sure. So
I do want to jump in 1 second because you said win by definition because it's uncreated. You do realize that's the same thing you're doing with a God, right? You've defined him as being uncreated.
That was my point. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So I just want to make the point that the atheists are just as faith-based. Atheist beliefs are just as faith-based as religious beliefs.
Well, the difference there is that
that
we know
it's-
quantum fields exist, and we have no reason to believe they were created. We have reason to believe they're fundamental and uncreated things because they're the most fundamental things we can interact with. We don't have reason to believe God exists, and by extension, we also don't have reason to believe whether he's created or not. So the difference there is that the atheist beliefs are grounded in things that we can demonstrate aren't in our imagination. And then the follow-up evidence of we have no reason to believe it's created, therefore it's rational to infer it wasn't created. Whereas God belief is just assertion and assertion number 2. So they're not equivalent.
Well, I see that
there's another point that we need to address is you're talking about atheist beliefs, and the thing is,
I can only address 1 point at a time.
I know.
I'm not going to
gotta
address 3
respond to
points.
this. I'm just going to clarify something so that it's a myth to say that there are atheist beliefs, because atheism is not about believing things. There's nothing in there, but religion has beliefs that are part of that religion. So you could say atheist people have beliefs that are separate from atheism, but the atheism itself doesn't inherently have any beliefs along with it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I see like there is something very admirable about admitting like underdeterminism, or you just don't know. And I do. or yeah, under determination. And I do find it, you know, quite off-putting when Christians do make, you know, claims of absolute truth with absolute certainty, or any religious people. But at the same token, what basically happens is that not only at the beginning of time, like what created the universe, because, you know, I mean, all of us are still, you're positing something, but you're basically, we're basically mired in ignorance scientifically at this point, so the origination of the universe. So it's like, so I want
to clarify there. So like, if we see a hoof print in the snow, and one person says it's a horse and one person says it's a unicorn, those are not equivalent claims. Like, we don't know what caused the hoof print. We didn't see what caused the hoof print. We are epistemically barred from ever going back in time and seeing what caused the hoof print. But there's a reasonable inference based off of things we've already seen in the past that have evidence they exist independent of our imagination. And so someone saying it was a horse is a rational conclusion, whereas someone saying it's a unicorn is not a rational conclusion. And so this is the same as difference between quantum fields and God. Quantum fields are like the horse, the things we can demonstrate, things we have evidence for.
they would be the same.
What?
They would be the same if you hadn't properly defined what a horse is, which is the state with quantum fields. We don't actually know what they are.
Wait, yeah, we do. What are you talking about?
No, we don't, or else we'd have a unifying theory between them and all of the rest of physics.
No,
so we don't know what they are entirely.
We can know what they are just fine. The fact that the quantum mechanics doesn't mesh with general relativity is a completely different problem. Of knowing what they are doesn't give us a solution between the mathematical equations there. That's completely irrelevant.
No, if we can't map them onto reality, then we don't know what they are.
We do map them. So just to give you an idea how successful the standard model in quantum electrodynamics is. Quantum electrodynamics, which is the unification of like Maxwell's equations for electromagnetism with quantum mechanics, is so accurate in its predictions that it gave us the precise value of the electron moment to like 16 digits. Before we measured it, we predicted the number and it was exactly what we thought it would be. So this is an extremely successful predictive theory. The problem is not that it doesn't predict things correctly. It does. The question is just, how does our earlier theory fit into the newer theory? So it's not an inaccurate theory or one that like fails to explain the available facts. It's just that we have two different theories. And this is often the case where you have two different levels of explanation, both of which appear to be valid, and you just don't know exactly how one could be expressed in terms of the other, or how they could be unified. But as an example, quantum electrodynamics was the successful unification of quantum mechanics from like Feynman's diagrams and so on with Maxwell's equations of electromagnetism. They successfully unified those, and they're likely going to successfully unify with gravity and relativity. It's just a matter of getting the work done and doing bigger and bigger experiments to get enough data to do it.
Okay, right, but you actually...
So just to clarify, quantum mechanics does map onto reality because we can demonstrate it with like the Casimir effect. We've literally seen the effects of these, so they do.
But right, no, I'm not disputing the science or the physics. What I am disputing is that even the claim behind science isn't faith-based.
What?
Okay, the claim behind science is that scientific progress is good for humanity.
What?
Right, that is like that. That is a fundamental claim of science.
No,
or else why would we
it
be
is
doing
not.
it?
Can I ask you what?
Why are we doing it?
What is science to you?
Like again, what? Okay, here's one you can agree with. We can explain the world through observation in the scientific method. That's a claim of science, right?
What is the scientific method? What is science?
Everyone knows what science is: hypothesis, experimentation, observation. Like peer review, or not peer review, but whatever the fourth one is.
Theory of selection, basically.
Yeah, so like that underlying the pursuit of science is a faith-based claim that we can understand the universe, right?
How is that faith-based if we're going through a process of peer review? How is it faith-based if we're going through a process of peer review?
How is it faith-based when we're going through a process of peer review? Because in order to justify the expenditure on the science initially, you have to believe that you're going to be able to explain the universe through that behavior.
So do you think it's faith-based when I start my car that I believe the car is going to start?
Well, I think there's faith down your chain of deep in your chain of reasoning. That's the point I'm trying to make.
What is my faith that when I start my car is going to start?
Right. So your faith is in history, the fact that it started before every time that it's turned on.
Well, how is that
so
faith?
I mean, that's evidence, but
yeah, that's evidence. That's not faith.
Right. I guess it would be deeper down. It would be deeper down in the reasoning why you're starting your car. Just starting your car, I guess, is faith that it hasn't been bombed. You know, I mean, like, again, it's low probability, but you still have you have faith in society that your car hasn't been.
That's evidence. So I have evidence that my car has not been bombed, or the bomb has not been strapped to my car for a very long time. So I have a reasonable justification to believe my car is not bombed. So I have a reason to start my car and expect it to not be bombed. That's not faith. That's just induction.
Right. And again, like, faith is in the axioms. So yeah, you're right. But why are you starting your car? If you go down that chain, eventually you get down to something
just to prove you wrong. I'm literally going to go down.
Belief.
I'm going to go down and start my car just to prove you wrong. So where's my faith?
In the idea that proving me wrong is a useful thing to do.
Wait, how is that faith-based? That's not faith-based either. That's also induction. It's useful because it gives me money from my YouTube channel. It entertains my audience. It gives me pleasure to make fun of you. Like, these are all things I have evidence for. Where's the faith?
Why are those things valuable?
Valuable because they make me feel good.
Why is you feeling good valuable?
Sorry, we hit the 4-hour mark and we need to wrap this up. We'll give you 30 seconds and then we're going to have to end everything here. And you guys can continue on T-Jump's channel or Amy's or something.
Yeah, I mean, basically, like, once you get to your base axioms for your reasons for doing everything, all you find is faith, and that's the unfortunate state of humanity.
Well, what's the faith there? I do things.
Well, if you keep going down your reasoning,
yeah, I do things because they make me happy.
You do things. Why? Why do you think you being happy is valuable?
I don't. I just enjoy it.
Why do you enjoy it?
Because of brain chemistry. I don't know.
Some people enjoy being very unhappy, right? Some people enjoy hurting other people. Why do you enjoy?
Who cares? I just do. Like, why? I don't care. I don't care.
Right, and that's where atheists always stop. I just do. Shut up. Exactly.
Well, that's not
I'm not saying shut. You shut.
But I don't have faith in something, which is why I believe I should do it. I enjoy it, and I do it because I enjoy it, and I don't need any further justification. So, like, there's no faith there. There's no faith anywhere in my worldview.
In fact, can I
There's
just
faith every time you
separate
wake
this
up in the
out?
morning.
But Valen, can we just separate out? We have two people. They're looking at a cancer patient, and one says, listen, I am going to use science in order to try and help this person. And another person says, I am just going to use faith. What do you think their methodology is?
No, obviously the scientific.
Let's make this quick, okay?
Yeah, obviously the scientific would be superior. I'm not arguing for the uselessness of science.
But I guess I agree.
Yeah, it's a longer conversation. It's harder to do than 30 seconds.
We can carry this on in next month's episode if you like. We'd be happy to have you. Maybe come earlier and we can get into it in a lot more detail because it is an interesting topic. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Really, we've gone past the 4-hour mark today, and we do need to close down the YouTube channel here. But I think T-Jump or Amy will both be around, and you're welcome to join them and carry on other conversations with them today, or wait until our next episode next month. You guys have anything quick you want to say before we go? We got to wrap this up pretty quick.
Just that you should all be subscribing to all the lovely channels, not just, you should be subscribing to T-Jump, subscribing to Randolph, and I love you all. It was another great show.
And T-Jump, you have something quick to say about the Church of the Best Possible Worlds?
Everybody go to the Church of the Best Possible Worlds.org and start your own church, promote the church so that we can build affordable housing and conquer the world, mostly affordable housing.
a noble pursuit, one I highly recommend more people encourage and contribute to. Ix, anything that you wanted to say before we close down here?
Yeah, religion is fun to study, and check out YouTube channels like Kriegenford, Mythvision, and wear sunscreen. Its benefits have been proven.
Scientifically. Thank you, everybody. More information can be found about all your hosts here and resources and sponsors at the theisthelpline.com website. That's www.theisthelpline.com, including our schedule for upcoming shows. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I really greatly appreciate everybody's contributions today and engagements. It's been quite a good show, I think. Take care and have a great day.
I'm